there is very small difference in the cost to the end user whether we go it alone or join up with neighbours. It therefore means we need to think strategically about collaboration beyond just Three Waters governance and management. I have sensed that a mountain to sea collaboration model is one worth exploring in consideration of synergies and efficiencies with Ruapehu and Rangitikei. We have strong links with our Manawatu and Palmerston North regional neighbours and others in the Horizons region, as we do to our west in the Taranaki region. However, with our population of around 50,000, we are in reality a small council, and to get geographical scale and population scale with collaboration is something we should not be scared about. This is different to amalgamation, but we should not be scared to talk about that too. Council will have to take a range of factors into consideration when it makes its decision about how to proceed with local water dam well legislation and who we might collaborate with, if anyone. These include the financial impact on water users, community views, and the strategic benefits and disadvantages of joining up with neighbours. We've had some great engagement to date with our community, and I want to thank those who have showed up to our local water done well community engagement or community kōreros. Early next year, we will formally consult with the community about the proposals in Water Services Delivery Plan before it is adopted. We want to hear the community's views early about what is important to you about the delivery of water services to inform the decisions Council will make in response to the government's changes. This week we kicked off the Heritage Festival, or the Wanganui Heritage Festival, to celebrate our rich history and vibrant culture here in Wanganui since we were declared a city 100 years ago. I encourage all of you to get out and about to celebrate our past with a sense of pride and at the same time look forward to our future with hope. While we're on the subject of dates, timelines and heritage, in about 2 weeks' time we will also open the redeveloped Te Whare Rehua Sarjeant Gallary, which was founded through the generosity of one man to his home city. In 1912, Henry Sarjeant left a huge sum of money, the equivalent of over $70 million in today's terms, to establish the gallery as a means of inspiration for ourselves and those who come after us. Henry Sarjeant's legacy remains. In fact, if he would be still among us, he would be incredibly proud of his vision to inspire us, has likely gone beyond his own imagination at the time. The 9th of November is the date that we should have marked in our calendars for the reopening. The reopening will be a major milestone in Wanganui's history, and it is appropriate that we have Nicola Williams here today to present to us. In her role as Chair of the Sarjeant Gallery Trust, Nicola has doggedly and passionately seen this project through, and much of this project's success is because of her leadership. Thank you, Nicola. There will be more thank yous to say on the day because there are a lot of thank yous, obviously. Some time ago, I called for a review of council-controlled organisations. As a result, the governance framework is being tidied up. The transition to reporting through to the CCO and Economic Development Committee is in full steam, with the appointment of 2 independent directors. Wanganui-born Paul Bailey is chair. Paul is a former merchant banker and retired Army colonel who served as chief executive of the Recovery and Development Agency in the British Virgin Islands and the permanent secretary for infrastructure and transport in Fiji. And the other independent director is Andrew Turner, who was deputy mayor of Christchurch City Council and was the chairman of the council's finance committee and a board member of Christchurch City Holdings. Among other governance roles, he is also chairman of the Wellington City Council's Community Housing Trust and the independent chair of Smart Growth in Western Bay of Plenty. As we progress our new vision for Wanganui, we will at the same time sharpen each CCO's financial return expectations, determine risk appetite, set clear goals and clarify expectations of each CCO. We also have new port directors, new NZICPA directors are in the process of being appointed and will soon go out to the market for a refresh of gas net directors. And it would be remiss not to mention NZICPA's wonderful graduation ceremony recently, and through hard work and tenacity, we are now seeing the financial results improve in what is cautiously a post-COVID recovery. I also want to publicly thank once again David Ray for his chairmanship, which in his resignation is now in the hands of Matthew Doyle. Today we'll also see the Chief Executive's report, which includes an update on the 6-point plan. I'm heartened by our response to the high rates environment, which has positioned us well to navigate these tough times and prepare for an exciting future for Wanganui. As a reflection on our Council's perceived high performance from LGNZ and our elected members across the country around efficiencies and cost savings, centred on the 6-point plan, has resulted in me being asked to MC the Combined Sector Local Government Conference in November around efficiency, performance and rates capping. Our Chief Executive and our Council organisation and councillors have worked extremely hard to find efficiencies and cost savings. It has been a true team effort. We are positioning ourselves well for the future, and I anticipate that next year many councils will continue to find cost pressures are still with them. However, I am very hopeful that because of our hard work, Wanganui will be in a position to significantly reduce the rates burden on our community and be in a better position than the majority of councils. One of the points of the 6-point plan is efficiency improvements, which includes insurance, which is on the agenda today. Like many households, my own family is being very strategic about what we insure for and for how much. Whether or not we have full contents insurance or selective contents insurance, whether to reduce other insurances by lowering the premiums. We're doing much the same at Council. We won't take undue risk for our strategic and important assets. However, we are asking questions about just about everything Council is involved in, including insurance premiums. Today, we'll make a decision on whether we reduce insurance premiums for a range of assets. Finally, we have one more Council meeting before Christmas, so it is not time to wish you all the best for the festive season. However, the sun was shining, and we have lots to be hopeful for and lots to be thankful for, as suggested in my last message. Thank you. Right, okay, I have just now received an apology from Councillor Charlie Anderson, and I'll move the motion that the Council accepts the apology of Councillor Charlie Anderson and grants leave of absence for this meeting. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kate. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that's moved. First, so you will have seen a video and a little bit of messaging about public forums, because in my view we don't use these enough. We're trying to bring council to the people, and ultimately that's about us connecting with our community in new and different ways, and ways that are traditional that we perhaps haven't leveraged. And so we on a public forum today, it's very pleasing that we have James Higgins here to present to us, and you're very welcome, James. You've got a 5-minute presentation and 5 minutes of questions, or thereabouts, and there are no resolutions on this matter, obviously. We're just keen to hear from you, so I'd like to invite you up to the Sorry, James, and you've got a, obviously...
This is Blake Tolley, who also happens to live, oh, thank you so much, happens to live in the same block that I'm living in at the moment.
Okay, welcome, Blake.
Just before we start, Anna, would you mind changing my second name to 2 I's instead of an E at the end, please? Thank you. Morena, my name's James Higgins. I'm a paramedic for Hatahone St John Ambulance in Wanganui. I've been here for about 2 years. Just to give you some context, that I'm here today to talk to you about residential parking within the CBD. The reason I'm talking about this is, as you'll be aware, about mid-August there was a change in policy where the new parking regulations came in, the parking rates increase, and also the introduction of parking on Rutland, changing to the timings on Ridgeway, changing to the timing and price on Drews Avenue. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is I live on Drews Avenue, as does Blake, and there's quite a few people I've been speaking to over the last couple of months that's led me to being here. The reason we're talking about this is there's now an issue with residents getting access to parking outside of their own properties or near to where that they're living. To put this into context, if I previously were able to park on Rutland during the day for free, 2-minute walk from where I live, not an issue. Nowadays we're in a position that Ridgeway, Drews and Rutland, you can't park for more than 2 hours. If you were able to park from the 8 till 5:30, for the 260 days of the year, you'd be required to pay parking. That's just shy of $5,000. Using Blake as an example, he's an emergency medical technician for the ambulance service. He's on around $63,000 a year. To give you some perspective, that's 7.7% of his annual income on parking his car outside of his residence, which I might expect for somewhere like Auckland. Your next option, if you were able to park, so somewhere like Phoenix, there is a paid option there for 8 till 5:30, but it is $2 an hour, so it's that 5,000 mark. Your next option after that is a private hired car parking space from the council, which is $30 a week. Comes out at about $1,560 per year. That is the same as the running cost for my Toyota Hilux per year. If we then put into the current climate with a cost of living crisis, where rates for, well, both residents and rental costs within the CBD have increased significantly over the last 12 months, we're now in a position where a lot of us who are young professionals or healthcare professionals who are paying for higher degree study or postgraduate study, that our rent is at times 50% or more of our weekly income. You then add an additional 10%, let's say, for parking fees, you're not leaving very much left. Your CBD at the moment, from a resident's perspective, is mostly populated by those who are young professionals or of low socioeconomic income and can't afford to do this. The reason I'm talking to you about this is because essentially, if we don't park near to where we're living, now that Rutland isn't able to park and UCOL only uses it for the 3-hour free parking ticket that they've got, all the parking has been pushed back towards Matua Gardens and Bell Street outside the police station. We're now finding that that is being pushed further and further back down Bell Street, down overflowing onto residential streets. And it's not uncommon that if you didn't have a parking space, that you are 15 to 20 minutes away from where you're living, outside someone else's house, which again, I don't think is unfair either. I appreciate I was having a conversation with Councillor Charlotte before this. I sound as though this is all about me, but there's a lot of other people with young children, with disabilities or illnesses, who are then being pushed further and further away. Solution-wise, the simple solution from a resident's perspective, purely, is something along the lines of a residence permit. It's done in Auckland, it's done in Wellington, it's done all the way around the world. It was done in the UK when I was back there a few years ago. You run it the same way that you can run the Rego for dogs. You just put an arbitrary fee of $100, $150 a year, and you limit them to a street or 2 streets around their address that they can park on. And then they can be charged the same way with the parkings team. If their permits are out of date, they still get fined, etc., etc. You're still guaranteeing an annual income, because I appreciate with parking, it is one of the ways of supporting the council's coffers. Completely appreciate that, and there is a need for it, as well as the turnover. You're still guaranteeing income. My final point that I'm going to leave you on is, if you think that the parking is working at the moment, I'd ask you to walk down there during the working week. Go and have a look at Rutland in the afternoon after 2 o'clock. Go and have a look at Drews Avenue. Go and have a look at Ridgeway. There is no one parked on those streets during the day when the parking is in force. Come back after 5:30, 6 o'clock, and the streets will fill up. So at the moment, it's not a positive income stream. It's going to be very ad hoc on the days where you actually have events on. You're not getting regular people in there. And I suspect actually if you were to put a feasibility study in place, you will probably get more money guaranteed from residents' permits across Wanganui than you would do from people paying for parking. Because I promise you, the number of people that turn up for the businesses on Drews Avenue, most of them won't pay for the parking unless there's a parking warden there. But I'm going to leave you on that point. Thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, James. Gosh, that was very articulate and very well presented and pretty compelling actually. So, and I think a lot of us are familiar with Auckland and Wellington, and my brother lives in Wellington. He's got a parking permit in Mount Victoria, and that's kind of how it rolls. So, But it does throw light on, I think this matter, if we think about inner city housing and intensification of housing in the inner city, this matter is only going to keep coming up. So we'll raise. But look, I'm conscious that some people might have some questions for you or comments. Anything to add to? You actually did a very good job of making sure all questions were answered. We've got Councillor Kate.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your presentation and coming to talk to us about it, because it really gives us an insight into what life's like from your perspective. So typically, how do you manage this?
So at the moment, up until I was on a waiting list for about 18 months from when I came over from the UK, waiting for a private car parking space because I foresaw this coming. I now, between me and my partner, have a single space in Phoenix, $30 a week that we split between the two of us, which is rather entertaining, trying to get a Toyota Hilux into one of those spaces because it's a tiny car park and the turning circle's pretty poor. The remainder of us, I mean, Blake basically ends up having to go and park the other side of Bell Street, which is proving to be an issue, especially with post-night shifts. So we run operational 48-hour shifts, 2 days, 2 nights across 4 days. If we finish, let's say we finish after 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, there's no way we're going to get parked and we're 20 minutes away. You're paying to unload your groceries outside the house, park in the car, $2 minimum to spend, unload the groceries, then go and move the car again. And back, yeah. So
I would imagine there's a bit of ducking and diving goes on to survive.
Huge amount, huge amount. And the biggest thing for me alongside that, it's not just having to walk 15 minutes at my age. It's not a massive stress. But the big thing for me is security. Drews Avenue's got CCTV cameras that covers the street and covers part of Rutland. Bell Street and up there is one of the most renowned places. The crossroad of Matua Gardens in Rutland is one of the highest places of car theft in Wanganui. There are no CCTV cameras or anything like that. And then we're putting our personal vehicles where they won't be insured by insurance companies because they're not outside our own home address. They're not on the street. They're God knows how far. And then we haven't got eyes on them. It's not like I can walk out in the afternoon and go, yeah, my car's still there. And then I can't leave anything in my vehicle because I don't know who's going to be around it. So there's a huge amount of roll-on and things.
Thank you. That's really helpful. My next question is, if and I don't have my head around the numbers of people living in the CBD, if everybody got a residence permit, have you any thoughts about how it might work through the peak times when we're really needing the parking?
What I think you'll probably find is the vast majority of people that live in the CBD will be taking their cars to work. So you'll find during the peak times during the day where you originally put the parking in to try and increase turnover of spaces, you're probably not going to have too much of an issue, or you might only have 1 or 2 of us who are shift workers who will leave the car there. One of the ways that we got around it in the UK was per residential address, you get a single permit. You're able to pay for further permits, but that first one at your standard rate is a single car per property. There's a little bit of to and fro with this, and a bit of balance of understanding that if you want to live in the CBD, you're probably not going to be able to have 3 cars, and it's just a bit of give and take with it. Vast majority of people, where we are, there's a block of 6 flats and another 3 or 4 flats? 4 flats? 4 flats next door. So, there's at least 10, 15 of us, but between us, we probably only have 6 or 7 cars. So it's not too bad. I think one of the main things we find in terms of congestion on Drews Avenue in Rutland is around the times when the likes of Porridge Watson or the Sour Bros are busy, and that's not actually within your parking times. That's outside of that. It's the 5:30 through till 11 o'clock at night. Otherwise, there is no congestion on those streets at the moment because no one's paying for the parking. So,
thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Really helpful.
Thank you. That's a bit over the 10 minutes gone, but just want to say thank you both for coming in and raising this. So what I'm going to ask the Chief Executive if he could take this away as an action. It's something we definitely need to follow up with and consider with. And it's one of these unintended consequences sometimes of some of the decisions we make, and we make the best decisions we can, but we certainly don't want you to be impacted or others in the future as well. So it's something we'll take on board.
Thank you.
All right. And your spelling's right everywhere else, it's just up there.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, have a great day, and
Thanks,
thanks
guys.
once again for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes from 25 July and 3 September. Yeah, I'm happy to move them both as one. So, do I have a seconder? Councillor Josh. Right. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Something?
Yes.
In the minutes of the, and I should have picked this earlier, I apologise. In the minutes of the 25th of July, it's got present all these councillors by name. I may have had a memory lapse, but after my name, Councillor Ross Fallon, there's Councillor Ross Hudson. Do I have a memory lapse, or is that an odd issue? It is a nice name, but I don't know who Ross Hudson is.
Rock Hudson.
Oh, I know who he is. Won't go there.
It's an error, we'll fix it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good spotting. You can be known as Rock Hudson by now.
Oh, no.
All right. Okay, no, thank you for that. So let's so all those in favour for the movement of these, against, motion's carried. All right. Any other further comments around the minutes? No? Okay, great. So next item is item 8.1. We move to public reports, and Nicola Williams, welcome. Nicola's been keen to present to council for a long time, so you're welcome, Nicola, to the table. Look forward to your presentation. You've got about 15 minutes, and there might be some questions or not. I'm not sure, but you're very welcome. I assume everyone knows Nicola. Yep, great.
Yeah, we certainly do. It's been a while. Yeah. Oh, well, kia ora, and thank you very much for inviting me. I have my fellow trustees here in spirit, but not in person. But yeah, thank you for inviting us, me, Andrew. As you probably, those of you who've been here a long time, which is the majority of you, would realise that the Trust used to regularly report on our activities to the Council, and I think it's really important that we're all on the same stage and giving the same messaging. And of course, the Trust's activities have changed now. We're focusing on is Te Whare Rehua Sarjeant Gallary Trust, our new name. We're focusing on going forward in the endowment fund and maintaining all our substantial stakeholder relationships and keeping in touch with the community and also keeping our connections alive with government, as we have done with all the respective governments. But unfortunately, we haven't perhaps been talking to you all as much, except on a ad hoc basis as much as we might have. So I think going forward it would be really good, and I won't be around for too much longer, but somebody else will be, another team will be there to talk to you. So just to quickly give you the kind of reach we have as a trust. You know, we had at the beginning, we have Chris Finlayson, ex-Attorney General, Treaty Settlements Manager, but you know, the Minister of Arts, who actually gave, in the history of New Zealand, the most funding away to the arts of any, in the history of any Minister of Arts and Culture. He's on our board, and of course that's a tremendous help for us, and he's obviously got huge connection. And of course Annette Main was there at that first stage when I joined as well, as the mayor that really got behind this project. When Chris said that he'd ring-fence the funding, then we were asked to match that $10 million funding, and the council pressed the button. So you're all aware of that, but just to re-emphasise also that we have Kiria Ponga as Po of the Awa on our trust representing iwi, as does Dr. Rauri Tinarau. And we have, as you mentioned, Your Worship, Paul Bailey, who's, substantial networks and very, very good to have. And we have our mayor, Andrew Tripe, as well. So I think it's a very, I think as a council you should be very pleased that that's the kind of support and networks that is there to wrap around the gallery. And I acknowledge Andrew Clifford, the gallery director, to wrap around the gallery director and his staff. So we feel the excitement brewing. We're here, and I got a whole lot of wonderful messages this morning from people who are coming, and they're people from near and far. We've got a number of foreign people coming. We have Suzanne Macaulay, who is the ex-head of the arts faculty from the old Polytech, the fine arts faculty, coming from the States. But we also have 3 or 4 people coming from the States. They're coming from the Middle East. We've got people coming from the UK. So it's that sort of really shows the level of interest in this project and how stakeholders and donors are so excited. So moving forward on that, I'd also like to, as well as to thank the council, because without your foresight to have put the tick, or given the tick for Sargeant on the Quay, we would not be in the position we are today at the reopening, having an highly experienced and professional staff on board. And we did see this across the other side of the island with the MTG when they opened. They did not have that, that level of experience there to meet all those people, because the opening is really our big chance to get everybody here, and we really need to have our pencils sharpened, and especially with respect to growing our supporter numbers and growing our donor, our database of donors. So the other thing is that you as a council have helped, and I'm sure you will continue to help provide confidence that the project's being properly managed, the buildings, being properly maintained. Now that we've gone from redevelopment project, that there is confidence that there's funding there to properly maintain and support the staff from the council, because really the role of the gallery is not operations. It's to actually make the gallery be what it can be. So, I mean, we really have to look at the amount of money, where it's come from, and what the expectation is. And the expectation is that this won't be just a regional gallery. This will be a gallery of not only national significance, but the opportunity is there for it to be a truly international, have truly global reach. And that's really all those people that invested this money, and as you're aware, over 60% of that came from outside with donors and taxpayers through government, is that this gallery will be what it was back in the days of Bill Millbank, when you were at Expo 92 in Seville. You were getting artists from the international stage, so for Andrew and his curatorial team, that they will have the resources to do that, and that will come through the endowment fund, through those donors, because they see the gallery as having that potential. So really, what I'm saying is that the trust is there to support, and we had Greg Anderson, the previous director before Andrew has capably taken the helm, who was pivotal in the capital raise, and his intrinsic knowledge of the gallery and its collection and its future potential, and the way he could sell the sizzle, really got people over the line. And so we now have Nikki Manthel, who's been appointed as the head of development, who's working closely not only with the gallery staff but with the trust. And she is highly experienced. She comes from Wellington City Gallery, and she has significant networks, and she will be taking up the mantle to drive that endowment fund that will enable, you should be sitting here, Andrew, in the co-pilot's chair until you take over the pilot's chair. She will be there to drive that and make sure that the funding is in place so that the gallery can play in those fields of getting international artists here, having travelling exhibitions, and we have in our donor family influences, or I don't say influences, people of influence, and people who can actually enable that for us to happen if we have the funding to play in those fields. So I think we're in a very exciting place. We've got this wonderful facility now, state-of-the-art facility. We've got the right staffing and leadership in place. All we need now is really to be ready and take this opportunity. I just want to also, talking about, the global opportunity, it was really Bill Milbank who took the gallery there, and I just want to mention the memorial service that is taking place at the gallery for Bill during the reopening weekend, and it is very much appreciated by the family. The letter that Mayor Andrew Tripe wrote to Bill's wife Rehua is deeply appreciated, and the family, it is a chance for us all to make, even though it's posthumously, to make right what was done to him was very, very wrong, and so it's a chance for all of us to say sorry, and we do acknowledge that, and I think it's wonderful that Andrew's been able to organise for the family to have this memorial service, and there'll be other things as well to really make sure that Bill is ingrained in the building for longevity. So really it's just like, I would just implore everyone you speak to, tell them, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Wanganui. It really is. I mean, there's thousands of people that are going to be coming over the following months, and I'd implore all of you, when you're out and about, just to make sure that people have got their pencils sharpened and their doors open to really embrace this opportunity. So I think that's really all for me.
Thank you, Nicola. Great update. Really fantastic. And I talk about you talked about international people coming to the opening, people coming from overseas, and I often talk about taking Wanganui to the world and bringing the world to Wanganui. And I think the Sarjeant Gallery will facilitate that just in and of itself, not to mention everything else that we're doing in Wanganui. But thank you. Do we have any questions or for Nicola? We've got Andrew up next anyway to talk about the specifics of the opening, but and may wait till then. Josh.
Oh, this is a comment rather than a question,
that's fine.
So I don't know whether... Okay, well, I just want to take the opportunity, Nicola, to thank you for the last, over a decade's worth of work on your part anyway. I mean, I know that it hasn't been easy at times. I know that, we've obviously gone through a global pandemic. I know that all the work that went in on behalf of the Trust and also the operational team on securing those what was upwards of $20-30 million of grants through the Provincial Growth Fund, obviously through the previous national-led government as well, and the enormous amount of work that went on behind the scenes to secure those substantial donations, along with all the private philanthropic donations as well. So yeah, just really want to acknowledge you in this forum. Obviously there'll be further opportunities as well, but for that work, I know that was all your own time that you gave up, and your constant advocacy for this project will be appreciated by Wanganui for decades to come. So just thank you very much for all the work that you've put in.
Well said.
Well, that's very kind, Councillor Josh, but I must reiterate, it's always been all about the project and all about the Sarjeant, and it's the only reason I have been there in the front line for better and worse, but I have been there But I would never, ever have been able to achieve this if I hadn't have had the support of my trust. And also, I have to tell you, there's an army of people around this nation who have believed in this project for a very long time. Some of them is generational support, and people who may not even live here anymore, but they have supported the Sarjeant because they want to leave a legacy and they realise the importance. You know, most of it was because of the collection and, you know, the nationally significant collection, but, you know, as Greg Anderson used to say, international photographic connoisseurs rated the photographic collection as being of international, some of the work is of international it's of international interest. And so there is a huge amount of support, and our database is quite impressive, I have to say, and half the names aren't even on there yet. They're the only people that have given, but there's a lot of people still. I think Nikki will have huge potential to go out, and the big thing is to make people have a really good impression of Whanganui when they come for the first time, so that they they come back again. And that's why the trust has invested in this along with council this weekend, because it's an investment in the future of the gallery and the future of the Whanganui region.
Yeah. Great. You've got a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I know every councillor around this room supports you. Nicola, you've done a lot of work. I won't go over it again. Thank you, Josh, for all your words of support. We all support you. I think it's incredible, the amount of work you've done. It's a very exciting couple of weeks coming up. I think we all adore the new extension as much as the old gallery, so that's very exciting. And I know all the artists in Whanganui are very excited. It's been a pretty lean time. Times are tough, but they are gearing up to fully support the experience that the opening of the Sarjeant will provide for visitors. And I noticed Utopia Gallery opened up in Guyton Street recently, and if you haven't been, go and have a look. It's got an exhibition of rats. Very, very interesting and challenging for a lot of people, but it's exciting when you get artists putting their hard-earned money into opening a new gallery. And in today's River City Press Courts Museum studio, again, you know, the only ceramics museum in New Zealand. It's an outstanding private trust that has put Rick Rudd's all of his effort into, and again, he'll be feeling very excited about what's happening for the Sarjeant and all those art lovers who are coming to Whanganui. So it's a very exciting time, and a time for us to celebrate a huge amount of work and energy and heart in the mouth for councillors as they've gone along this journey. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would like to, if I hadn't been focused on the Sarjeant, I would have liked to have helped Rick more, because what he has there is, along with we have our dealer galleries and they flourish. You know, though it's hard for them, but hopefully they will all benefit, as will business in this region and tourism. And for that reason, we've got the eyesight along the Trust's marquee, so that there's an opportunity there for Whanganui business and for for the wider community to benefit from this reopening. But with Courts Gallery, it is something that is very special, and Rick does really need a succession plan. So I do hope that there will be the support there, and we won't. This is a very significant collection he has, and it's got, I think, half the number of pieces of the Sarjeant collection. So it's something quite extraordinary, and we perhaps need to help him more in the future. We're probably over time, but I'll have one further comment from you.
Thank you, Nicola, for the update today. I particularly like this occasion to be able to thank you personally. We won't probably be able to do that much on that weekend of the 9th. There'll be so many there and so many people to thank that probably won't be able to get you here like we are able to today. So thank you, because this project, as you are well aware, has had some pretty difficult times over the last probably 20 years. And 15 years ago, it was completely shelved, and there's been a comeback, and there's been enthusiastic people that have got behind this project, both in this room and at the gallery. And I certainly believe that I'm one of those people that have done whatever I can to get that extension done. And what is particularly significant is that when you came aboard, it opened doors. It opened doors in central government with your contacts with the previous minister, Chris Finlayson, those sorts of things. You have opened doors around New Zealand to the arts community. And if your presence is not going to carry on there, like you just told us today, after the extension, that will be a great loss. So I would certainly like to see you there going into the future. I think that this project is a little misinformed in the public by what is actually said about the cost of this project to the ratepayer. And I think we're up to 82% non-ratepayer funding of this project, which there's never been a project like it in Wanganui that's achieved anything like that. And it's people like yourself, Nicola, and other people before you, and the people that are around you now that have actually achieved that. So I think this community needs to pay a great thank you to you and your trust team especially, about the commitment that you have made to raising this funds from out of Wanganui and achieving what is going to happen on November the 9th. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Vincent. I'm touched by your words, but I can assure you the next chair of the trust will be somebody, a new, fresh approach, and will drive this forward in the very best way. So I think you can have confidence that the trustees will make sure that person is in place. But I would like to also remind you that this project is not, it's not the reason our family got behind it, the reason that so many, there's some major benefactors in this region as well who have given hugely, and I can tell you just about, and people, the people that gave within this region, it was all about the gallery and the economic impact. The tool that the gallery was to raise community pride in an area that was depressed. As Shane Jones said, called us a surge area. In the days of the fishing company, when we got regional development funding, we were seen as being a marginal area, a marginal region, because of the number of unemployed. And in the 80s, we had 3% of our population had a tertiary qualification. Our best were leaving, our young were not staying. That is why it wasn't about the art, but it was about the art, because that's the raison d'etre, but it was what the deliverables were, would the impact be of this gallery opening in this region. And then of course you've got other, as well as community pride, you've also got, a place for people to gather, the feel good place of actually being able to go there. The education for children, that is huge potential there. And I'm sure Andrew and his team will really capitalise on that. And also it's a good way to get the money in the door too. Education spins the wheels. So yes, there is the arts sector, and people like Dame Jenny Gibbs will share her funding, was all committed to the Auckland Art Gallery. She was so supportive to Greg and I, and gave us so many, and Dale Mace, there were so many people like them, Hugh Rennie, Donald Trott here, Dame Cass Tizard, so many also who are no longer with us, but hugely influential, and they open doors to so many people that have given money. But the economic driver, the potential to attract visitors to this region was quite a large factor for the Wanganui people that gave. I'm talking about quite a few that gave 7 and the 7 figure. And the Auckland Art Gallery always said to me, "Who are they? Where do you find them?" And I say to them, "We're different from you. We don't have this huge, great monument of a wall with donor names. These are people you will probably never know their names. If you don't know their names now, you may never know their names. But they're people who gave for the betterment of their community." And that's what Greg, again, what he always said, it's not about self-aggrandisement. We haven't got time for that. It's about what is the best thing for the project. And that's why I've been very proud, and I think our family is very pleased that we have put resources into this. And I thank you again for your support as a council, because without a council with if you hadn't have had the vision and the tenacity to see it through, and I know it took political courage, then again this project would not have got to completion state, because even though after you press the green button, there were still times when we could have failed. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nicola. Look, I think what we're saying is that it's a team effort, but the reality is that you have played a big part in that, and so we are thanking you as well. All right, wonderful.
Okay.
Well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
we'll look forward to seeing you on the big weekend.
So I need to just move. We've moved it and seconded it, haven't we? So I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Kate? So all those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right. So I'll invite. Thank you very much, Nicola. Once again, have a great day, and we'll.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have to go for the important.
Oh, that's right.
The important presentation by Andrew, but
yeah. All right.
wish you
Great.
well. And
yeah,
thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a lovely
Nicola.
Labour weekend.
Yeah, we'll see you around there. Okay. Welcome, Andrew. Yeah. So, item 8.2, the Te Whare o Rehua Sarjeant Gallary opening ceremony update. So, in a couple of weeks' time, the doors will be open, and Andrew, looking forward to your update. Thank you.
Hard to believe, in fact. We're almost pinching ourselves. But kia ora koutou. Thanks again for your continued interest and the invitation today to come and speak to this meeting so close to the opening and brief you on how it's going to shape up. As I say, and we're pitching ourselves because as those last details fall into place, it really is about a dream becoming a reality. Firstly, I just want to endorse the previous report as well and reiterate our gratitude to everything the Trust have done, your support, and all of those who've come before the current gallery team that have made this happen too. But also to add and acknowledge the Herculean efforts and long hours being undertaken by the gallery staff at the moment to meet some extremely challenging deadlines. But all final details are rapidly taking shape, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you. So some brief points to give you a better sense of how that opening weekend and beyond is going to look. First, the opening itself, it's a program of events that will extend across the first month of operations to ensure a more enduring and sustained launch for the Sarjeant Gallery and to relieve some of the pressure from the first weekend. We want to get some serious momentum out of that opening, and the bigger and longer push we give it, the more that means for the ongoing operations. Nearly all events are free and open to everyone, with just a couple of invitation events to acknowledge specific supporters, such as our Friends and Stars, which I know includes some of you. Key events on the first Saturday are the dawn ceremony and then the official opening ceremony mihi, which takes place at 9:30 a.m. in front of the gallery. Much effort has gone into securing sponsorship support to ensure maximum savings and value for our program, and to demonstrate the widespread support from our business community, including from Air Chatham's, H&A Print, Clearview Estate Wines, Brews on Drews, Essence Catering, the Wanganui Chronicle, Property Brokers, Speedy Signs, Transit Horizons, and the Avenue Hotel. It's so pleasing to see everyone coming on board at this time, and this also, through the work that Nikki and others are doing, establishes how we want to continue operating with that support to achieve great value from a wider community investment. We're encouraging people to use public transport to attend the opening weekend. So thanks to support from Transit and Horizons, all bus services will be free on that day, and the Tide will have extended hours through Saturday, making it easy for people to get around and explore Wanganui. Also, parking wardens will be out being ambassadors for information and will not be ticketing in the immediate area. We want to make this as positive an experience as we can, and getting around is that first hurdle that we want to make frictionless. Volunteers and other organisations will support as attendants, information officers and ushers, including Māori wardens. For the first weekend, there will be an outside marquee arranged by the Sarjeant Gallary Trust for information, accessibility support and hospitality, especially at times when it might be too busy to get into the gallery. And we'll have actual eyesight staff to assist to ensure visitors get the best information about other things to do in Wanganui while they're in town. And we're particularly focusing, as you may have already seen in our current communications, on promoting the other galleries in the city too. We want to make sure if people are here for an art experience, they know about all of the art experiences available to them. Our colleagues at Pūtiki Marae are providing a pōwhiri on Friday the 8th to welcome other iwi groups arriving in the area, and we acknowledge their involvement and partnership through this project too. Other local galleries, visitor organisations and Main Street businesses have been briefed so they can benefit from the opportunity of accommodating extra visitors, and many will open extra hours to ensure visitors have the best possible experience of Wanganui. We want to make sure they come back and they tell their friends to come too. We don't want them to say, well, we went to the gallery and then everyone was closed on Sunday or whatever the experience might be. So we've been talking to everybody as much as we can so they know what's happening over the weekend and will be a part of it too. This is for the whole city. There will be activities and entertainment inside and outside the gallery throughout the first weekend, including local musicians Alphabet Head and Anthony Tonnen, and an evening light show on the exterior of the gallery so everyone can enjoy the evening and the opening. The full program is now available on our website, has been circulated through social media and email, and will be published in a handy guide in the Chronicle next Friday to ensure as wide a range of our community as possible know about it and can participate. And we look forward to seeing you all there on the 9th, along with as many people as you can bring with you and everyone else who's out there listening too. Can't wait. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So I think it's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yes.
But we're thinking about, in fact, we had Jackie Gowler and Kerry Williams giving them thanks to Councillor Philippa, we had a ceremony yesterday about their Olympic, to celebrate their Olympic achievements, and they crossed the finish line, but it was all the work they do behind the scenes and the work leading up to that, and it's a bit like that. We've got the pinnacle on the 9th of November, but the week leading up to that, and I just want to say, I'll talk about comments soon, but I'll have my comment now. We've got comments soon, but I'll have my comment now, is that your team have worked incredibly hard, so for the record, I just want to say thank you to your team and to you as well. And also, we know that leading up to these things, there's a lot of tension, a lot of stress. So I just encourage them to hang in there and know that they are being acknowledged for their hard work amidst all of that. So thank you. We'll go to any questions of clarification. We have Councillor Rob.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and all the work that's going on that obviously must be massive. Well done.
Rob, can you just put your mic on? It was on, but...
just a concern, in our diary, our council diary, which most of us work to pretty rigidly, the only function to go to is the 4:30 a.m. at opening. So is there any other functions that councillors there has been a bit of confusion because the communication that's come out to me looks like has gone to my wife's email address, but addressed to Dear Rob, and I'm a bit confused about what else we are supposed to be going to as representatives of this council. Can you just clarify?
So I'm just wondering. There might be this is probably more of a personal thing. So maybe if you could take that offline. But in regard to that, I know there has been some areas that the team have had to tidy up and work on, and that's natural with these kind of things. It's a lot of people to invite, and a lot of logistics to support. But perhaps with this specific item, you could take that offline with Andrew, and I'm sure he'd be happy to help with that.
So Your Worship, is that potpourri at the only item that's going to go into our diaries?
Look, I think it's probably best just to take that offline. There's a whole range of activities that's been well communicated as to, but as far as what we'll do is we'll seek clarification as what the councillors will get invited to if that's not clear already. But is that okay, Andrew?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a huge program of events. There's literally hundreds of things happening over that month, with a number of them requiring invitations. So we have sent out a lot of emails to literally thousands of people. So not every single one may have arrived in the inbox expected, but we've followed up as much as we can. It's a very complex piece of work, but you should have all received specific individual emails for each individual event, of which there are a number. And if you could please RSVP to the gallery team through the contacts that were given with those invitations, or just get in touch if that's not clear, and we'll make sure you know what the various events are on the day.
Thank you.
Any other questions of clarification, just outside of own interests?
Yeah,
Councillor
thanks.
Charlotte.
I'd just like to know where people can be directed to find the schedule of events over the weekend.
Easy. Sarjeant.org.nz, and right from the home page there should be a big splash which will link you through to the Summer of Art page or the upcoming events page, in which there's in broad detail and then finer detail exactly what's happening over that entire month. That should be the entire program. We're pushing it out through our social media to make sure that gets out there as well. There will be email, EDM updates coming out, and as I say, there'll be a full program in the Chronicle as well. So that's all laid out in a nice tidy program.
Wonderful.
And also we'll probably have the similar information circulating around town as well.
Great. So just to clarify, we can push the website.
Yes, please.
Beauty.
Or follow our social media, where anyone interested who's not already will be getting updates and seeing information too.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'll add to that. I mean, in the busy world we live in, often we don't see everything until the last moment, but the communication is, I've seen, starting to ramp up, and but I'd encourage all of us around the table here to use social media for those that use it, and to tell your friends and everyone, and there's a lot of great events coming up, so make sure that you're clear about them and spread the word. Councillor Kate.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you for the very like I've had a raft of invitations, and I'm very clear about what's happening and when, so thank you very much to you and your team for that. My question around is follows on from your comment around the Chronicle, and I'm just wondering, for those members of our community who are not on social media and don't get the Chronicle, is there going to be a itinerary or schedule in one of the free newspapers, River City Press or the Midweek? There is a significant proportion of our community who don't have either social media or subscribe to the Chronicle.
Yeah, we hadn't planned to place further promotion there in that specific form. We have been using them for general announcements and so on. But certainly we're making every effort to make sure it's as available as possible out on the street in a range of ways, physical and digital, wherever we can.
Sure. Well, I just asked you to give that
if
consideration.
in the time that might be an option. Yes,
if you wouldn't mind,
yes.
really appreciate it.
And I think Councillor Kate raises a really good point. There are a number of people that don't receive the newspaper and don't have social media. So I think, yeah, if you could just give that consideration, Andrew. I mean, look, it has been well communicated, but there's just other people that, to fill the gap, and we might as well spread the word wide and far. I'll go to Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hope you're sleeping well, or will do after this weekend. You've got a million details to cover, and I don't want to sound like the Spanish Inquisition, but sincerely, for those who have disability accessing on the day, be it walking through or pulling their vehicle up, will advice be available, be it the Chronicle, Facebook, or your website, that just gives them a bit of a heads up to not drive up, or if you drive up, there might be a golf buggy. I don't know what's there, but would you be able to mention that now in any way?
Certainly, I agree that's an absolute priority, and the staff feel very strongly about inclusion and accessibility, so it's definitely on our radar. I'll follow up for you and just make sure how clearly we're communicating, but there will be support. But as you say, we need to make sure people know that the support is there and how and when to arrive. So I'll double check, because we absolutely agree.
Thank you.
Right, and Councillor Michael.
Thank you. It's not in the report, so feel free to point of order me. But when will we receive the breakdown of the cost of the gallery opening ceremony and the delta between what was proposed versus what we cut you by for the opening?
Yeah.
Point of order.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Which point of order?
So,
It is irrelevance.
yeah, no, I'll have to agree with that, I'm afraid, Councillor Michael. This is purely about the opening ceremony. There will be opportunities to review the opening in general, and how we, a review of that, and including costs and so on. So we'll save that for another time. Yeah.
So it's not about the opening ceremony, it's about the opening ceremony minus the cost breakdown structure.
At this stage, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
About when a point of order is raised and the member arguing against it. So perhaps.
Yeah. Oh,
Irrelevance.
all right.
You
okay,
can't be.
So let's.
You're getting involved.
Okay, come on. That's fine. I was just merely. We're all good. Okay, thank you, Councillor Charlotte.
I just had a comment, if we can move into comments.
Okay, so we're in question time. Any more further questions, and we'll move to comments? No. Okay. So no further comments. I'll move that the council receive the report. Te Whare Rehua Sarjeant Gallary opening ceremony update October 2024. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Glenda. Any comments? So we'll move to Councillor Charlotte. Comments. And thank you, Andrew. Once again, I'll just thank you very much once again to your team. Just if you pass that on from me and from all of us, I'm sure, in regard to the effort they're putting in. It will be stressful, it'll be challenging, but their efforts, I know, are appreciated. So, and thank you for your update.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Charlotte.
I would really just like to echo what Mayor Andrew has just said. I bumped into one of your staff yesterday who gave me a bit of a download of where things are at and just how incredibly hard everyone is working and how much passion everyone on staff is putting into this opening, and I think it's echoing through our entire community, and excitement is really starting to build. I would really love to thank you for your leadership through this process, Andrew. You're an absolute asset to our community, to our town, and to the gallery. So I wish you and your staff all the best in the next couple of weeks in the lead up, and I really look forward to those first steps through the gallery. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Councillor Ross.
Briefly, this is going to be oversubscribed on the day, so I wish you well, because there will be a huge turnout. I have gone from a doubting Thomas some years ago to an absolute passionate convert and very active on my Facebook page. And it's largely due to the conversations that I've had with your predecessor, yourself, and in particular Nicola, who was able to help me understand and smooth out all my misunderstandings. if I'm not present at some of the activities, it's not because I don't wish to be there, it's because I have a problem with crowds. It's a trigger for me. So it does not mean that my absence means a lack of faith. As a counsellor, I'll do my best to attend what I can, because I think it's going to be an absolute ripper. In my diary, I wrote, "The Phoenix has risen." That's how I put it. And I'm known to talk. That's how I put it in my diary. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments? You have, okay, yeah, you've got it.
If I could just respond to that last point too, that's another reason why we've gone for a full month of events, because we have been in communication with some of our supporters who have let us know they won't be arriving on the opening day because of anxiety about crowds, and we've reassured them that we absolutely understand and they shouldn't feel bad about that at all, and there will be quieter events over the rest of the month to allow them to come at another time and perhaps have a more personal experience. We absolutely understand, and no one should feel bad about not being there on the first day, and I've had some conversations with some good supporters so they don't feel nervous about not being there, because we know that they know and they will all be there at the time that they can. We'll see you all on the 9th.
Yeah, and let's just say that the opening program extends for a few weeks. All right, great. Thank you very much, Andrew, and you've probably got plenty of work to do, but thank you very much once again for your efforts, and have a great day. Yeah. Okay. So no further comments. So I'm happy to put the motion on the screen. All those in favour? All right. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right. No one abstained. I should check on that. Yes, no one's abstained. No, it's all fully in favour. Right. Item 8.3, 4 and 5 are all specific to road closures for various events. Now, I just want to remind everyone that these are purely about road closures, so nothing more than that. So welcome, Andre and Marianne. Right. Are you going to do what? You're going to cover all three? Are you?
Yeah, I'll do them one by one.
Do one by one.
Yeah,
one by one.
All three of them. Yeah.
Yep, sure. Yep.
Morning. The first one is for the Caboodle Festival, which is held annually across Wellington.
Just bring the microphone a bit closer to you. Thank you.
Over anniversary weekend, Wellington anniversary weekend. We've had no objections in regards to from emergency services and Horizons, etc. Local businesses were consulted, had a pre-engagement, and there were no objections in regards to the road closure. And the last engagement was in regards to public submissions. We have received no objections in regards to the road closure. The options we have available to us is either option 1, which is council close the roads, or which we support, and the second one is council doesn't close the roads, and we do not support this one due to the lack of absence of any objections.
Right, great. Well, it should be pretty simple. Happy, okay. So Councillor Philippa to move, and Councillor Michael has seconded that. Do we have any questions before we go? We've got comments, but any questions or comments? No? Okay. Councillor Philippa, are you? Yeah, I think it was just from you moving it here. All right, so no further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen that the, it's quite a long one, so I'm not going to read it all, but basically, can you just go up a little bit more? That the application for intended road closure for the purpose of the annual Caboodle Festival 2025. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. So item 8.4 is now the application for intended road closure for the purpose of the annual Pakaitore Celebration 2025.
This application is for a day extra due to the 30-year anniversary of the celebrations. Same as the previous one, have no objections. Traffic management plan has been approved, and our option again, preferred option, where council closes the roads.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any questions? Assume not. I'm happy to move that. Any seconders? Councillor Charlotte. Comments? Okay. No further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen. that the application for intended road closure for the purpose of the annual Pakaitore Celebrations 2025. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Abstain? Motion carried. Thank you. And item 8.5, application for intended road closure for the purpose of the Te Whare or Rehua Sarjeant Gallary opening.
Again, on the 9th of November, there's intended road closure. Again, no objections. We've had 2 different traffic management plans been submitted. First one was for 5 o'clock in the morning on the 9th, and that has subsequently been updated to 3 o'clock of the morning on the Saturday. No objections, and again, option 1 is that we support the road closure.
Okay, great. Questions? Deputy Mayor Helen.
Thank you. With the 3 a.m. road closure, how does that work if people have parked up in the area?
In the area at that time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the event coordinator and manager that has to enforce or do the traffic management plan. So that's not anything to do with council. It's the event organiser has to deal with that.
Thank you.
That's all right. Councillor Kate.
Thank you. I've got a question, and it probably applies to the previous 2 items as well, and it's about our advertising in the Chronicle. When does, if I was to ask the question technically, when does notification to the public, given that I don't know how many of a percentage of our population subscribe to the Chronicle, when is it deemed that public notification's been given?
Normally on all our websites and everything, and in the Chronicle, it's normally for 2 weeks. So it's consecutively for 2 weeks we do advertise.
Okay, sorry, I should have asked more clearly. My question's more in relation to the if only a part of the population subscribe to the Chronicle, what about the rest of the population that don't get the Chronicle, the free papers?
As I said, that's only the sources we advertise on. And obviously probably word of mouth going around of those who have advertised or seen the advertisements. Sorry, mate.
Can I just clarify, are you meaning the advertising of when the event's happening and the road's closed so people know? Right, so that's a little bit different. So we advertise, the public notice is the process that Andre's talking about, that we have to put it out for 2 weeks to allow people to object or anything like that. So that's already happened prior to this. In terms of the actual advertising for the event, that wouldn't be us doing it, that would be the event owners.
I get that. My question's around public notification. And if, say, I'll give an example, a bit extreme. Say only 20% of our community get the Chronicle. Is that deemed to have been given public notification? If we know that only 20% of our population...
Yes. We're required to put it in print media. There's not an obligation under the Act of how many people you have to reach.
Ah, interesting. Maybe we need to think about that going forward.
All right. Okay. No further questions. So propose that we put the motion on the screen that the application for intended road closure for the purpose of Te Whare or Rehua Sarjeant Gallary opening. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ross, seconder. Councillor Kate. Any comments on this item? No? Okay. Great. So no further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Abstain? Okay, motion is carried. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Andre. Thank you very much, Maz. Yep. All right. So, Susan Cosmata, you've been very patient. Thank you, Susan, sitting there. Hopefully you found it interesting, listening. So we move to item 8.6, Risk and Assurance Committee Chair's Update, October 2024. If you just put your microphone on, that'd be
Kia ora tātou, thank you. Yes, it has been interesting. It's good to sit in and listen to the items. Just a brief update on the Risk and Assurance committee meeting of the 3rd of October. Prior to the meeting, we had workshops for all councillors on the insurance approach, which is obviously on the agenda today, and also one on the council's risk appetite as part of our overall risk management framework. The purpose of the risk appetite workshop was to sort of update and review and discuss the risk categories against the likelihood and consequence of the risks, to identify what our risk tolerance might be. Sounds very exciting, but a very important piece of work so that we're clear about in our reporting for the future, you know, what is acceptable risk and what is not, and where might we need to escalate. And the last approval of that risk management framework was 2022, and so it's very timely for leading up to a review and finalising that early this next year. We made some good progress in that workshop with feedback from the councillors about those categories, but we didn't get through all of the work that we needed to do. There will be a further workshop to work through the remaining risk categories, and the Chief Executive has agreed to provide an updated risk table with those consequences and likelihoods and the tolerance to sort of facilitate that discussion at the next workshop, which would then come forward to full council for approval. So it's an ongoing piece of work that we're working through. Obviously, the main item for our meeting on the 3rd of October was the insurance item, and we'll come to that shortly. There are other points I just want to make about the meeting itself. We get a report regularly on the strategic risks for the council, and there was a significant review by the executive leadership team over the last few months on the strategic risks to actually get them updated and looking at their currency. They do this regularly, and that's a really important process for the Risk and Assurance Committee to know that it's done in a dynamic and timely way. So we get the top 10 risks, and then we get full descriptors about the drivers of those risks and the impacts and the mitigations and controls, and what else is planned to actually work on that risk. So they're really comprehensive reports. We've got some nice little dashboards that are easy to read on those top 10 risks, so if you want to have a look, they are there. I just wanted to highlight that the number one strategic risk, and I've just really abbreviated this because it's quite a long worded risk, but it is about, it's a financial risk. The top strategic risk in our top 10 is the financial risk, and in an abbreviated way, that the targets in our LTP are not met through the 6-point plan and all the other projects and plans we've got in the long-term plan. The big risk, the top one for us at the moment, is that we don't hit some of those targets. And I'm sure you're all aware of that, but it's quite, confronting to put it right in front of you. The second one is IT and cybersecurity. There's a lot of mitigations in place around that sort of work, but it's an ongoing issue, as are some of the other top 10 risks, such as workplace health and safety. They're on our list, top 10 all the time, really. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of those top 10 strategic risks and what we look at. We also had a newish sort of report on emerging risks. We've always had a bit of a view of emerging risks, but the risk managers now put together a nice sort of framework for that. So we've got a new report showing the emerging risk and the initial assessment of those and what the council's doing about keeping across them to make sure that they don't, that we're aware of how they're tracking over time. The other thing that we had at the meeting, which we've sort of seen occasionally, but the executive leadership team, when they review the strategic risks and when they're brought to risk and assurance, we need to think about the environmental context and the changes. So like a pestle, a number of you will be familiar with like a pestle assessment, which is about what in the political area is moving and shifting and changing, what in the environmental area is moving and changing, and what have we taken into account as we look at those risks. So taking an environmental scan, basically. That's been put in front of the committee at the last meeting so that the committee members can add to that and can identify whether there are significant environmental issues or outside the council's work, nationally or internationally, that are not included in that. So it's just giving a lot more visibility to that, which is quite a useful little document, a one-pager. We had regular reports around statutory legal compliance and update on policy reviews and health and safety and wellbeing reports. One other point I just wanted to talk about was over the last year, the council have outsourced internal audit to BDO, and they've been working on 2 reports for us that have been delayed, not through the council's responsibility, but it's been more some change at BDO. But we've got the 2 reports due to come to our meeting in December. There's one on sensitive expenditure and the credit card usage and the elected members' payments, and that's coming to our next meeting. So that will be the internal audit of those items, and there's a program of work in the internal audit going forward. As far as external audit was concerned, we got the Audit New Zealand final report on the long-term plan just to finish that off, and we were satisfied with that. So that's my verbal update. Open for any comments or questions. Oh, sorry, back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, that's it. No, you're very welcome to say that. So, so are there any comments? Any questions? Sorry, from anyone? Obviously, that was very clear, and I think it's really exciting, actually, where things are going with the Risk and Assurance Committee, and thanks to your leadership, Susan. We do have some questions. So, Councillor Kate.
My question's really around the next item and whether you will have the opportunity to speak to that. So maybe it's a question of you, Andrew.
This is around the insurance coverage.
Insurance item?
Susan's presenting on that, so
she is.
Yes,
right,
yes.
Thank you.
So there'll be an opportunity then. And Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you. I'm just wanting to know a little bit more about emerging risks. Are you able to sort of speak to that at all? Maybe give an example or 2?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Just refer to my yes. So there's a few. So the first one on the emerging risk register is around the freshwater gold clam breeding and spreading. The next one was around avian influenza. So, these are big, not just, local risks, but they are ones that have been identified. So the avian influenza is a contagious viral disease. Changes to the NZTA emergency work subsidy is another one. An inability to source sustainable external funding may result in improvements projects being delayed or significantly. So there's that, and there's also space weather may disrupt. Critical infrastructure, electricity, communication networks. So those are some that have come to us. Yep.
It's broad, isn't it?
Yes.
The breadth of risk.
These are the ones I think where the team are looking out and saying what's sort of on the horizon, including like the NZTA emergency work program. Yeah. So that that's. I mean, it's important that we have a view of them.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Susan. So look, there are no further questions. So I propose that we move the motion on the screen that the council receive the verbal update, Risk and Assurance Committee Chair's update, October 2024. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Kate. Now, any comments? Comments, Councillor Kate.
I'll just reiterate what you've spoken to about the good state I think that the Risk and Assurance Committee work is in, and I think it's very ably led by Susan, and I think added to by our other independent member, Mike Timmer. So good work, and it's probably the last meeting, or you might be at the next meeting, but if not, thank you, and we look forward to your continued involvement next year.
Thank you. Yes, I do. Nice to acknowledge independent member Mike Timmer, who has contributed significantly as well. And so thank you for your kind words. Also, our risk manager does a lot of work to support us, Debbie Watson, in this space. So thank you.
Yeah, once again, another team effort. But you know what I would say is that when you hear the words risk and assurance, you might start to yawn a little bit. But I would suggest that it is actually a really important and actually quite exciting subject, and people open their eyes and actually look at what it's all about. And it's an area that's incredibly important for our council, particularly as councils across the world, across New Zealand, and indeed us, can be quite conservative. So how we think about risk actually opens up opportunities for us to think differently about how we manage the district. So once again, Susan, thank you very much for your work on that, and Debbie as well, Debbie Watson, who behind the scenes as well. She's not here today, but it's her dedicated position. So great. So no further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen that Risk and Assurance Committee Chairs update, October 2024. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Abstain? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. And so you'll remain there. So item 8.7. This is a specific aspect of our discussions recently in the Risk and Assurance Committee around recommended changes to Council's insurance coverage under its material damages policy. I've talked about that in my message at the start a little bit, but over to you, Susan, just to give us a summary.
Thank you. I'm aware it's a big paper. It's an important paper, and I will take it as read. But there are some points I just want to make to highlight for you as we work through this. There's been very good engagement and discussion in previous meetings about the insurance strategy and the approach being taken. I was particularly pleased with the attendance at the workshop around the insurance, and I think that gave us a number of ways of looking at what we needed to do in the event of a big event, and with scenarios and a number of ways of thinking about how we take this work forward. So really good engagement and discussion in previous meetings prior to and at the workshop and at the meeting on the 3rd of October. This was a significant item, and we did spend quite a bit of time on it at our meeting on the 3rd. We have been working on this in a staged and planned way, so that I think gives us some confidence about the thinking going forward, and has helped to form the approach and develop the paper, and gets us to today where we're making these recommendations to the council. I mentioned before that the top strategic risk is around financial targets in the LTP. And the cost of insurance premiums is actually one of those. We know last year that the cost was significantly more, and we realised, the council made the decision at the time that we needed to do something about this work going forward. If nothing is done, it's expected that the cost of insurance premiums will continue to increase. I believe that the paper sets out a considered and prudent approach that has been taken in line with our strategy and with the Local Government Act. While we can look at the criticality assessment of the assets, that's been the basis on which we've looked at how we move this work forward. We've also looked at the ability to self-fund after an event and the cost of that funding, and the impact that that would have on the community and the ratepayers over time. We've got some estimates of what this proposal or this recommendation will mean in terms of savings on premiums, but I'm aware that Mike Femmel, the CFO, is still working through discussions with Aon, our insurer, and the initial premium that was ring-fenced around these assets that are recommended to be removed from the schedule was around 240,000. The other estimate that we had in this area that is in the paper was 250,000 saving on the premium if we changed the deductibles or the excess, which is the second part of this paper. So Mike asked me not to talk too much about what those savings would be at this point. We've got estimates at this point, but negotiations are continuing. To actually firm those up, we need to continue those negotiations. We also know that while we'll be removing some assets from the insurance schedule, if that's what's agreed today, then we do need to look at the cost of insurance for the Sarjeant Gallery going forward as well. Okay, so the risks are in the paper. I think the paper sets out the key information. There are risk and mitigations in this, and this insurance work will expect to be continued. So we're putting in front of you that recommendation, the recommendations today, and I'm open to any comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. So, question, Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, forgive me if I missed it, but I have sort of trawled through the reference papers. I'm a bit confused about where the line is in terms of insuring assets or cutting them loose.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If we have you got the paper?
And also forgive me for not attending the workshop. It was in the school holidays and it's a tricky one to attend for me.
Yep. So there is an attachment to the paper.
Yeah.
Is that on? Yep. And there is a line. There's
is this
that one?
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So everything above the second blue line, I think it is.
Okay, so you're talking. So we're looking at page 55 of the agenda.
Yes.
And so all of the high
criticality are not being recommended because they are high criticality rating with a few others that are
and a little chunk of the
mediums. Yes, that's right. And so below the second blue line, they are the ones that are recommended for removal from the material damages policy. Yep,
completely.
Is that clear? Yes.
Thank you. Right. Got it. I see that now. I don't know why I missed that.
All right, Deputy Mayor Helen.
Thank you for that. Some quick questions to start with. We don't currently insure the museum or its contents, do we? That's not our business, or do we insure the museum building?
That's in here.
So probably in the
Michael,
museum building.
We insure the building, but the collection is not owned by council.
Thank you. And the art gallery is and retain the insurance on that. But what about the contents?
There is a separate policy called the Fine Arts Policy,
Oh, yeah.
and that covers the artwork.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Is there going to be any opportunity for the public to have a say on what would not be insured?
The broader question is two things. Is this significant, where you have to engage with community? I think to answer that question, we need to step back and rather than look at individual things that we're not insuring, look at what we are trying to achieve. We're not changing any levels of service. We're still maintaining assets, still business as usual. What we've decided is that taking a prudent approach to managing our expenses and the rates increase we pass on to the ratepayer, we've decided for certain assets with a reasonably low criticality rating that we will take the risk onto our balance sheet.
The savings from that effectively would counteract any cost to council should one of these assets be damaged and council decides at that point in time to repair it. So savings, what we're doing. The risk, if it is materialised, will be a cost to council, potentially, but it could be roughly cost neutral. I think the questions going forward is that if we start digging deeper into this, then it may be a question we ask through the annual plan. Do you want us to continue taking more risk on our balance sheet?
Sorry, could you just clarify when you say if we get deeper into this, what does that, what do you mean?
What I mean is that if we start deciding to not insure or take the risk onto our own balance sheet through some of the more critical assets, or we cut quite a bit in other policies, the risk to council increases, and we may want to ask the public, are you prepared to take a higher risk tolerance than what we currently have? And again, it's not about individual assets, it's about the risk tolerance here.
Thank you. And in terms of, in the event of a very large earthquake, it's probably the biggest risk in terms of size. When the committee considered all the assets to not insure, was that discussion had about, well, a devastating effect could mean we have quite a lot not insured? If you could just, you know, and the impact on the balance sheet, I guess, for that and our ability to then be able to afford to rebuild. What sort of...
We started with the criticality assessment, which included the usage. So I think that was the important starting point. The categories and the criticality, we're going back a couple of meetings now. So, yes, okay, Mike will just cover that.
Perhaps I think what's important, and this was the focus of the workshop and also in the paper here, is actually trying to think about, in a major earthquake, what happens. The assets we're taking off the schedule are not the assets that you first turn your mind to. You first turn your mind to the critical, essential services that council needs to restore. 3 waters, critical roads, those are the first things. Do we have cover or funding support for that? And that was part of the workshop through our insurance proceeds, through reorganising a long-term plan, expense lines. We have cover for that. These assets we're talking about here is something you'll turn your mind to years down the track. And because many of these are low critical, many of these you possibly would not replace. Or if you replace them, maybe something different. So following in summary, following a major earthquake, there are sufficient funds, we have sufficient coverage through insurance proceeds, through our own long-term plan finances to get the city back into a functioning order.
Thank you.
Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yes, unfortunately, I was away for the workshop as well, so I'm not up to the play with this, except that it's a pretty drastic move here to remove this number of properties. So I sent you an email 2 days ago, Mike. I haven't heard any response about it, but the approach was a bit different to what appears to be undertaken here, which is remove the asset or increase the deductible. And I made the point that in my commercial properties, I removed the liability or the cover for natural, what's it called? Natural
disasters.
Natural disasters, okay? And that reduced the policies by 2/3. I couldn't believe it. And I just had another quote about it to see whether it changed, because I've done this for 8 years. And a $2,200 policy would have added $4,000 to include earthquake, volcanic activity, subterranean activity, tsunamis. I'm still covered for the important things, which is fire, which is the biggest risk that we've got, and flood. So I just wondered whether that approach had been thought about.
I think we're going for a journey. We've started a process, it hasn't ended, and we've started with what officers consider and what the Risk and Insurance Committee has worked through with officers on this, and what is a prudent approach to doing this. Given the impact of the Christchurch earthquake, I think at this point in time it might be quite a big call to remove cover for that type of event if it happened in Wanganui, particularly as we are ourselves prone to earthquake. So it's something we can consider later on, but right now there'd need to be considerable work done before we decided to go down that stage. Overarching everything is both our insurance strategy and the Local Government Act to exercise prudence in what we do.
Yeah, so, I mean, then it's up for a challenge then, by leaving all these assets out, if the risk is there. I think that it's a matter of risk, isn't it? What's the risk of an earthquake? And what's the risk on these particular properties?
No, it's more. Sorry to interrupt. It is more than that. It is what's the risk, and the risk is twofold: likelihood of occurrence, and if it occurs, the level of damage. So level of damage is critical when it comes to a major earthquake.
So there's no mention of any of the roading assets and things on this?
Oh, sorry.
There's no mention of all the roading assets and infrastructure on this document here.
The document...
Are they different?
Yeah, the report talks about the third stage in the journey being looking at the property assets and the material damages policy. If we want to move further, we can then start looking at other policies. The three water assets is covered, the below ground three water assets are covered on the infrastructure policy. We don't insure roads. There is NZTA funding, partial funding for that, although we have insured a number of critical bridges.
Okay, great. No further questions. We've talked about this quite a bit. Sorry, Councillor Kate, you do have a question. Yeah.
We have. I found it quite helpful when the Chief Executive talked us through the kind of experience, and it has been mentioned about the experience of Christchurch and just what we would be thinking in the event of a major disaster, what the steps might be in terms of where insurance cover has its place and where the balance sheet has its place. So could I ask the Chief Executive, through you, Mr. Chair, to just kind of frame it, just give us a bit of an overview of what we're talking about here at a very high level?
Sounds like he's willing and able and keen to do that as well. So yeah.
Certainly willing. We'll see whether I'm able or not. Last time I had the benefit of some PowerPoints and a few other prompts to my memory. So I'll give it my best go. So through you, Your Worship, I think Mike or Suzanne already said this isn't actually about the assets. This is about protecting our balance sheet. That's what insurance's job is for, because insurance offers zero protection to our assets. It's just a way of paying to repair them after the fact. Or the alternative is you use the council's balance sheet to fund and finance the rebuild. So if we look at a high level the Christchurch experience as a proxy for one of the most probable natural disasters that could hit Wanganui, our insurance maximum probable loss figures are calculated based on that kind of scenario. Post the Christchurch event, I think they had about a 20% reduction in population as people left because their houses were damaged and they needed to go to other areas of the region or leave the region and stay with friends, family, or find alternative accommodation. If you imagine the impact that losing, say, 20% of the council's revenue would have on us, that would be material. because we would start potentially to struggle to pay for the services that we're delivering. Our debt borrowing capacity also linked to the level of income. We have the 280% LGFA cap on debt to revenue ratio that we need to meet. So you lose your revenue, you lose strength from your balance sheet and your ability to pay. Fortunately, what Christchurch experienced, is my understanding, is there was then a relatively rapid influx of people moving into the city to support the rebuild. So their population bounced back quite quickly. And again, that there would have hopefully restored some income to the council. Alongside that, though, there's non-critical services that council provide. And you can probably imagine that if people's houses have been knocked down and the libraries are damaged and the wastewater treatment plant's not working, opening the libraries or cutting the grass on the parks, they're not priorities. So there's a lot of services, some of which attract fees and charges revenue, that will shut. The Splash Centre would be a really good example. People have lost their homes and they're dealing with an earthquake. They're not off for a swim with the kids at the weekend. So all of that money disappears, which further impacts on your balance sheet. So again, the insurance component of the piece is how much do you think we can afford to pay for from debt? And effectively, if you think of it in your personal circumstances, your house burns down, you've got contents insurance, some of it will get replaced through your contents insurance, other things you'll probably pop on the credit card because the insurance just didn't cover it, but you know that you can afford to do that. Same kind of consideration for the council, how much can we put on the credit card so that we don't have to pay for as much insurance today and be prepared to take that risk. Again, in the longer term, if you play it out, the Christchurch recovery has been going for a decade plus. So it's not like insurance for your house or your car. Someone steals your car, you need to buy a new car straight away and replace it. For the council and our infrastructure, it's going to be a staged recovery that will take decades. If you look at our long-term plan, we've got $500 million of investment budgeted. Quite a big proportion of that is targeted at rebuilding our assets when they get old and need to be replaced. So we're actually well provisioned to fund and finance a big portion of the rebuild through our BAU budgets that are already in the LTP. So you're actually not taking quite as big a risk as you think by reducing your level of insurance in that space, because you were planning to spend the money anyway. You were planning to rate the community for it, you were planning to borrow and raise the debt for it. So leverage what we've already got in the budgets for the rebuild, because that's what the money was there for in the first place. And you were going to spend it over a similar kind of time frame that the recovery phase is going to run for. So it's in that context that we are, certainly at a management level, very comfortable that we're not taking undue or reckless risks, and that it ought to be within our appetite. But ultimately you as the councillors are the decision makers on this one. To Rob's earlier point, yes, looking at amending the scope of the coverage is definitely an option. This is an iterative journey, as Mike has explained. But you know, a tsunami is very different from an earthquake. Earthquake with the alpine fault has got a reasonably credible probability of occurring. And that's why we've based the maximum probable loss on that particular scenario. But absolutely, a tsunami is only going to impact a small proportion of the district. The amount of damage or the exposure to that hazard is significantly smaller. And we may well find that we're comfortable removing it entirely from the insurance policy coverage because the balance sheet is strong enough to fully fund recovery without too much of a negative impact on the ratepayer. We need more time to do that work, but absolutely it's something we can bring back to the council in the future. Does that kind of cover it?
Yes, that is. Thank you. Just one further question. My question is, just because we're removing the insurance cover, what does that mean? Should we lose that asset? Does it necessarily mean it won't be replaced, or will it be replaced? And there's a number, you know, Lake Wirratoa toilet, cemetery house, the Jury Hill Memorial Tower, you know, those sorts of things. I think we need to be very clear for our community about what might happen should those assets be decimated, what would the process be next?
Yep. So again, in real simple terms, and possibly at the risk of oversimplifying, but the insurance has got nothing to do with our assets and the decision as to whether you replace them or not. It is simply about how you pay for the replacement and how much protection do you want to give to our balance sheet. You're effectively buying insurance to protect the biggest asset we've got, our balance sheet. Insured, not insured, you'll decide at the time whether you do or don't replace it, whether it's insured or not. It's just about how you pay for it.
Would I add to that that it's a case-by-case basis? Yep.
So
Yep.
it's
Yeah, it would be, like I say, it would be a decision of the day.
Yep.
Whether it's insured now or not has no bearing, really. This is about the global picture and how much we can afford to self-fund using our balance sheet, and how much do we want to insure, because we don't want to leverage our balance sheet to the max and then put the ratepayer in a position of having an unwieldy level of debt to repay in the future, and making sure we strike a good balance between avoiding costs today without creating big liability in the future. There's a sliding scale of those two things. I think we're starting to go towards the Goldilocks zone in the middle, which is just about right.
Right, thank you. Councillor Rob.
The other point that needs questioning on this schedule is the properties that are left out, saying it's not going to be, they're going to be removed, but they're tenanted properties. And I would have thought that mostly the tenant pays the insurance cost. So what's going to happen with those buildings? How does that place? For instance, the major one being the Toyota building and all that land along there. I'm sure they must be paying the premium.
Through you, Worship, Mr. Firmore will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding they'll pay us a lease only, but we as the asset owner pay the insurance. Is that right, Mike? Or have I got that wrong?
There can be variables to that.
Yeah.
The lease could ask the tenant to pay the outgoings such as rates, insurance and ground maintenance, or we could pay it. So there are variables to that. So certainly we have worked with the property team to advise them so they're aware of what's happening here, so they can make adjustments where necessary.
Yeah.
So through you, Worship, given the more refined answer that Mr. Firmore has given you, all of the information around the assets has come from our property team, so this hasn't been a top-down finance exercise. It's very much bottom-up and top-down, meet in the middle. Where tenants are paying the insurance, there's no value to the ratepayer to remove the insurance, so we would allow those arrangements to continue. But as I said in my previous answer, insured or not insured, tenanted, not tenanted, this isn't about the assets. It's about how you pay for them and protecting our balance sheet. So if we have removed some of those remove some of those buildings from the insurance schedule, no direct impact just because they're a tenanted property.
My concern here, these are essentially buildings that are mentioned here. The sort of disaster like Cyclone Gabrielle, is rightly we're still covered for, but these individual buildings don't seem to have the risk, the main risk covered, which is fire, and vandalism. I mean, we've had the grandstand burnt down at Wembley Park in the past, but it appears that we are taking the approach, we'll just remove the asset, but why not leave it covered by fire, for instance, or vandalism?
Through you, Your Worship, this matter, and appreciate the councillor wasn't at the workshop, but it was canvassed at the workshop. The reason for its full removal is simply if we do experience a fire, it's likely to be a localised incident that only affects a single asset, single property, and it is well within the council's affordability just to self-insure that. So remove the cost of insurance entirely. And if you look at our historic spend, I think it's circa $10 million on insurance premiums, so that we can make about $250,000 claim. Incredibly poor value for money, being so highly insured.
Thank you. Councillor Philippa.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've understood most of the discussion and conversation, but so, you know, a couple, the velodrome, only newly replaced the track, you know, at a cost of about 2.5 million, a little bit less. It's already, you know, vandalism is an issue. It's on a very public site. We're doing our best to look, you know, it's a, and I mean, I was going to, you know, it seems, you know, a very high value, like it has been insured at, but, you know, this is a significant sporting asset that we may well hope to do further work around in the future to make it more useful. So to not actually insure it, I hear the big picture of it doesn't mean that we wouldn't, but it does make, you know, that we wouldn't fire, major vandalism, that we wouldn't, you know, make the decision to look after it. But it also means we're going to have to come back and go, you know, and there was the conversation around, oh, how much usage and this and that. So that's kind of what concerns me, David, and a new asset. Please.
Question?
Yep, noted. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure what the question was.
Well, the question was why surely we could reduce the I mean, you know, it doesn't seem that, I mean, there's more than just the 2.5 million, there's all the retaining, there's a lot of, you know, other assets around that, but why wouldn't we reduce the total, the value of the asset and at least look at it for what may happen, what our real risk around it is, vandalism, fire, etc. And then I'm kind of going to things like Cook's Gardens. I don't see the track in there. That's a significant cost to replace that track. Am I missing some stuff?
So,
the athletics track as well.
I'm going to give you the bureaucrat's answer to this one, Philippa, I think, so that I don't accidentally stray into politics around the velodrome itself. Look, my previous answer, it's not about the asset. This is about paying the cost of paying for insurance today or taking the risk of putting the repair costs on our balance sheet. I appreciate that in the future, if you lose an asset that is uninsured, there will be a discussion and a debate about whether it should or should not be replaced, whereas if it is insured, it's probably a given. So the question is, if it's uninsured, then the decision to replace it should go relatively straightforward if there's a cost to benefit ratio to justify it. But equally, there ought to be a cost to benefit ratio to justify its replacement if we're prepared to pay an insurance premium and rate our community to pay for that premium today. So the question around whether you should or shouldn't repair is equally as valid as whether you should or shouldn't insure.
But surely,
and as I say, it's not about the individual assets, and we could all go around and pick our winners and favourites. So we have taken a very asset agnostic approach to this to try and make the process relatively clinical.
You have a supplementary question?
Yeah, I guess, you know, and I'm going to use it as an example again, the velodrome being new, and yes, heard your answer, but apart from, you know, you've admitted there'd be a conversation, etc. But I mean, it actually took. It was basically unusable for 3 years. So you delay. You know, this is the use of the facility. You know, how do you expect? How do we expect activities to continue on? You know, we wouldn't ever do that to our pool. You know, we're not going to. You know,
sorry, what's your question?
So my question is, I mean, my question is a new facility, a significant sporting facility. Why would we put ourselves in the place that we need to actually put an activities in the athletics track out of action for quite a period while we go through a process, rather than it's insured. It's important. We need this activity, and we're going to cover it for the right type of premium and for what we think the risk is.
So, through you, Worship, I don't think I can answer your question in any way that's going to satisfy you, Philippa, because Councillor Philippa, yeah. Sorry, all of you. So instead, I'll make a couple of comments that I hope will be helpful. Again, if you use the Christchurch experience as a guide, they haven't rebuilt the city as it was before. And if I refer back to my training when I went through the local controller and the recovery manager's civil defence training courses, when you're in the recovery phase, you actually have a huge opportunity to engage with the community whilst you have, using the word a blank slate is probably a bit tone deaf given we're talking about earthquake, but you have an opportunity to build back something different, something better, to enhance the city rather than it just being an opportunity to rebuild the status quo. So yes, take your point, there's a risk that if you aren't insured, the debate is lost around whether it should be replaced because there's a cost to the ratepayer. Alternatively, the decision could be made to rebuild, but rebuild better, enhanced, new location, paired up with new enhanced other facilities. The community will guide how they want the recovery process to roll out, and they have quite a unique opportunity, and it is one of the positives that comes out from some pretty catastrophic events, is that opportunity to redesign and rebuild better than before the event. That's probably all I can say. I know I haven't satisfied your question, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Look, there's no easy answer for this until it actually happens, but we're looking at scenarios and what could and couldn't be the case. So, Councillor Kate. Yeah.
Move the recommendation,
Sure.
Mr Mayor.
Okay, happy to move. Seconder, we have a seconder, Councillor Kalenda. So do we have any comments on this item?
Yep.
Councillor Kate, you've got your...
Thank you. I would like to speak to this. Look, at the end of the day, we would all like to insure everything for top dollar, top type of insurance, so that we would have no risk to our balance sheet, basically, and that everybody would know that everything's well insured. But we can't afford it, and our ratepayers can't afford it. So this is, I think, been a very considered, pragmatic approach to how we can cut costs, but still ensure we have the ability to do the right thing in the event of a loss of city assets. I'll leave it at that.
Right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Hallam.
Thank you. I want to thank the committee for all the hard work they've done on this. It's a huge amount of work, and I'm sure it hasn't been easy. I've had a good look at this paper. I have questioned our finance officer, and I'm satisfied with the answers that I have received. So I do support this. The 1 million excess I totally support. We definitely can afford that as a large consumer of insurance. And a 1 million excess per any one asset will mean that if you have a fire, well, there's a whole lot not going to be insured, right? Automatically. So we're self-insuring anyway. So it's really then the larger events that I've had an eye over, and earthquake is one of our bigger risks. The big one hasn't happened here yet, but the studies that have been done that are very professional show that there is a reasonable risk. So then I say, okay, is it reasonable that we would drop all these assets off? Because there's a lot of small stuff and the public won't have seen this. The velodrome's probably the bigger one in value terms of assets that wouldn't be insured under this proposal. And then there's a whole lot of small ones, but some of those here are, for example, monuments, and that would include the Veterans Steps, I would assume, and the Jury Hill Memorial Tower aren't insured. The Ward Observatory, the Tiley Cottage, the Tram Shed, the Wanganui Riverboat Centre. And that's just a snapshot. There's a very long list there. And so I had to think about Wanganui as our reputation as this heritage town. We could well lose, at one stroke, a lot of that heritage assets. And I thought, how would the public feel about that? And it will be harder to make a decision to replace something if you don't have insurance. Let's be real. When it comes down to it, it will be harder because there will be lots of stress on the balance sheet. And I think that in an event of a big earthquake like you had in Christchurch, priorities change. You then go into survival mode and replacing the assets that are really, really critical that people need to just be living in that town. And so I think that the committee have well considered and have retained insurance on those assets, such as the Splash Centre, such as the Sarjeant Gallary, the museum, that sort of thing. Those are assets that people would expect us to rebuild and retain, and everything else will then fall into that category of, well, we won't to, and that'll be later, once you pass the critical phase. What I would like this council to look at seriously doing, however, is pre-plan now and have discussions with our community now about what should Wanganui look like if we have the big one. And it would be a discussion that would be an in-principle discussion. If we had the big earthquake and the War Memorial Tower was no longer in one piece, if all of these other smaller assets were no longer there, if the town centre was looking pretty bad because a whole lot of buildings had fallen down, what would we want Wanganui to look like? Would we fight over replacing the heritage assets, or would we say, actually, it's just time to say that was then, this is now, there's a new opportunity to look at creating a new Wanganui. And if you have those discussions before the big one, everybody's got a bit of a steer and a blueprint for future, and you're not fighting and having disagreement, and not amongst even just amongst yourselves, but amongst that with the public about holding on and fighting for something like the Christchurch Cathedral, which has just been dragged out. You will drag out discussions. It will be terribly upsetting when you're trying to face an emergency. So if you have those pre-discussions with the community and organisations like Main Street, the heritage organisations, etc., the sports organisations, you can get some idea and sense of what Wanganui could look like in that event. And then you have that blueprint you can take forward to whenever that event may happen, and you can lay it out and say, we've had the discussions. It might, hopefully if nothing happens for 50 years, you continue to have those discussions every so many years. And it will give, the plan like that will give certainty to the community, and you won't be fighting amongst yourself, amongst the community when you need to be in a recovery phase. So I'd really implore that we look at that, maybe some funding through the annual plan if we need to do that, or some plan to take that conversation forward so that, yeah, we've got that plan. So thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Councillor Charlotte, I think you're next, yes.
Thank you. Look, a lot of what I was going to say has sort of already been covered, but I would just like to again thank all of the officers and the committee for the work on this. It's obviously incredibly timing with the economic environment, and I'd really like to emphasise that this is a strategic conversation that we're having. You know, as the chief executive sort of stated in about 4 different ways, this is not about the assets, it's about the strategy, and it's one piece of the overall asset management strategy. So I think, you know, when we continue this conversation and, you know, going through into this resolution, we need to maintain an overall view on this, it's a high level discussion. And I'd like to talk what the Deputy Mayor has said in regards to Christchurch. Josh and I were lucky enough to be there last week, and it was actually the first time that I had been in Christchurch since prior to the quake. And it's just incredible. You know, we spent some time with some Christchurch City councillors and ECAN, and we were lucky enough to have a tour of the Selwyn district and see what windows can open when something so devastating happens. And, you know, I think the conversation around what would our town look like is a really good one, particularly on specific issues like heritage, you know, like narrowing it down and asking those questions now, I think is a good idea, because it makes what comes next a lot smoother. But a lot of it's unknown, you know. I mean, in Christchurch, they didn't know where the sediment was going to come up. But what's happened in those areas now is incredible green spaces of gardens and wetlands. And, you know, so, yeah, they'll just leave it at that. But thanks very much to everyone involved so far. This is really positive.
Thank you. Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. So I want to go to a real high level. So insurance is a bit of a modern day balance sheet smoother, which sounds fancy, but most of us regular people, we have insurance not because we want insurance, but because we have to have insurance. So we think it's kind of normal to have insurance. I'd like to really commend the officers for thinking outside the box, because we don't need to have insurance. In fact, to go against one of my colleagues across from the road from me, if we wasn't in a bad situation and needed to lower rates, I would still want to do this, because mathematically it makes no sense to be insured. And the reason why is when we look at why we have insurance, it's a mathematical answer to an outcome that you want to achieve. The outcome you want to achieve is to protect your assets and replace your assets. Now that's based upon, now it's a bit fancy term, but risk-adjusted maximal probable loss. What does that mean? It means how likely is something going to happen, how much it's going to cost in the future, right? If you have the money, you don't get insured. It's as simple as that. No rich person is going to have insurance unless they want to like smooth something over. So it doesn't happen. The cost of capital in the council is so low, which means when you divide the maximum loss, probable loss by the risk adjustment, and you take into consideration the cost of capital, the return on investment of not having insurance just actually makes total sense. I do like the idea of keeping some things insured from the criticality point of view. I really appreciated Mike's criticality assessment. I voted against this in the risk and insurance meeting because I didn't like the fact that we didn't have a really obvious line. In fact, Councillor Philippa raised it almost instantly. You know, why is the velodrome below the line? I still believe we should only be insuring high criticality issues. It makes it cleaner, easier. There's no politics. There's no emotional context. It's just obvious. High critical gets insured. I won't raise that today because I lost that vote and I don't want to raise it again. But I just want to really commend everyone on these items, and I really want the public to be aware that insurance is not a mandatory thing. It's an emotional thing through fear of loss. We have the balance sheet to do this, so we don't need to waste money. And if I remember correctly, Mike, 6 to 8 years is a break even on this. So just, I guess, if the earthquake happens in 4 years' time, then oops.
Councillor Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when I started thinking about this, the key bit of information for me was, you know, the fact that this council has spent net of $10 million over the last 10 years for $250,000 of claims. And, you know, if you reflect on whether or not that passes the prudency test in terms of cost versus benefit, I think it's fairly clear that we did need to do some work in this space. I do want to thank Susan, I want to thank Mike, I want to thank David and Debbie as well, and others for the process around this decision, because there's been a lot of information that's come through to the Risk and Assurance Committee. We've had several workshops, and it's allowed us to get to a place where I think everyone in the main is fairly comfortable with the final recommendation, so thank you for that. The key question really is where, as has been stated previously, where does the risk sit? Do we transfer it to a third party, or do we take it on ourselves through our balance sheet? And that's really what this is all about. I just want to make a comment around some of the discussion around the likes of the velodrome. I mean, the reality is that, you know, for something like the velodrome to be flattened, we're talking you know, a high magnitude earthquake or similar. And the reality is that there are far more extensive priorities at that point than whether or not we fix a sporting facility. I would suggest that that's quite far down the list in terms of where our balance sheet headroom would be prioritised during that process. So I'm very comfortable that we've got the balance right and that we're protecting the high criticality assets, and everything beyond that would be a discussion that we have at the time based on the context. So very happy to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Philippa.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm hoping Mayor Andrew, you'd be happy to take both these recommendations separately, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because I certainly would be supporting B. And while I understand, you know, yeah, I mean, hearing all the other argument, hearing the work that's been done, yeah, a couple of things. One, my whole family live in Christchurch, right through the earthquakes. And while absolutely homing people was number one, the Mayor then, Leanne Dalzell, was just very, very clear on that. I don't think anyone disagreed with that. But, you know, the impact on a whole lot of other stuff that is still happening to the community and activity, you know, I mean, at the time there was kind of, you know, it's a 10-year journey. It's a 30-year plus journey. And there's been a lot of, you know, it's taken a lot of public, private, council, government, you know, and, you know, through the cost of living crisis and everything, confidence has been dented and then raised. And, you know, we look at the cathedral, you know, it's stopped. It's had millions spent on it, but it's stopped, and it's not looking like it's going anywhere. Well, it's not going to. But, you know, actually well-being and sport and recreation, I mean, they've still got their main big pool is still not built, and you know, those kind of services, you know, the community just, you know, not having public pools, they basically had, I think, only 2 pools in the whole of the Christchurch region. So I, you know, yeah, hopefully we never get to that. But my other point would be, you know, I will be voting against this in regard to the velodrome being below the line. It sends totally the wrong message to our community, to, you know, anything we want to do, which we should be looking at as we move out of our cost of living crisis. You know, we just had the chair of the Sarjeant Gallary telling us how important numerous councils that I've sat on longer than any of you, and have at times very reluctantly supported that project, but supported it. But how important is our council being able to say they support it to all the funders and the government? And we've just rebuilt this velodrome that only just got over the line. And, you know, without going majorly into the issue, this council hasn't backed that enough. I think it knows that. It hasn't led it enough. And if that is to be, the potential of that is has to be considered at a certain time. And we're sending completely the wrong message by keeping that facility under the line, particularly when it actually does get vandalised. It's a wooden structure that would probably crumble quite quickly in a fairly not so significant earthquake. Yeah, and I just cannot support it for that issue alone, but the big picture of the message we send as the leaders of this community, if we're ever going to go forward and get the kind of a support we would need to basically roof that facility for, which is one of only 3 wooden velodromes in the country, and there will never be another one built. It has a lot of potential far and beyond indoor cycling, apart from Elise Andrews, her father, and that team is looking to come here on a regular basis, and that all helps build stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rob.
Thank you. Yes, well, I am a bit hamstrung by not being involved in the workshops, but the list that's here published really concerns me. Because, first of all, I raised the point, and the Chief Executive said that the property team have only put on here the properties that wouldn't be affected if by the tenancies. Well, there's a lot of properties here with tenants in. You know, besides the Veggie Man down there, there's 3,205 there. The Riverboat Centre, 9,753. I mean, are they going to be happy about it not having their building insured? I mean, there seems to be some anomalies here that need to be tidied up. The Spriggans Park changing rooms, 5,980. Now, there's a real high risk of fire around there and vandalism. As I said, we've already had it occur. You know, and some of these things like that policy there, what I negotiated with my policies would probably bring that 5,980 down to around $2,000. And that's cover for everything except earthquake, volcanic activity, tsunamis, subterranean explosions or something. And, you know, it's talked about the level of risk with earthquakes. Christchurch is always raised. Unfortunately, you know, Christchurch has inspired a lot of insurance companies to charge a lot of money to cover for earthquake risk. And I'm not the only one who's dropped earthquake cover out of policies. It's very common across the commercial sector because of the costs involved in and the likelihood. We had a presentation from GNS in around 2011 after this because we were all concerned about the risk, and given that we hadn't had an earthquake that caused any damage ever in our history in Wanganui, any substantial damage, even in the 1931 Napier Hastings earthquake passed us over with minor damage. And so it was looked at. And GNS produced the map that they plot. Every earthquake gets plotted onto this map and it produces a swarm. And we are on the very edge of that swarm where it swings around from the Hawke's Bay, comes across through Palmerston North. We are on the very edge of it. And so I think as far as the risk concerned of earthquakes, we really need to analyse that and just assess what it is. Because I think that we could still insure a lot of these properties for the major risk of fire and vandalism, but not insure them for earthquake cover and natural disaster, and bring this policy down. You know, I mean, in my case, it was 2/3. You know, so I just hope that this is taken up with Aon, because it doesn't appear that the question has been asked of the broker. Broker not going to do it unless you ask them. My broker went back to Vero, the insurer, and the insurer came back with these cost differences, and it astounded me, to be honest, how much the difference was. So I just put it out there to David as to follow that through. It might be with our policy and our insurer that they won't go at it, what Vero did. I don't know. But it's an approach that's worth looking at because it still retains the cover on some of these buildings, the high risk of fire.
Thank you. Right. So thank you. Look, this is we've had quite some comments and questions on this, and it's important that we have, because this was always going to be the big item on the agenda today. It's actually, what I would say is I would applaud all of us, both council officers and the risk and assurance team under you, Susan. This is what prudent councils do. We look at opportunities to find efficiencies and cost savings and balance the interests of risk, and that's what we've done. And I think this is a really good balance of finding savings but also managing risk at the same time. So no further comments. So I'm going to put the motion on the screen into two parts, as suggested by Councillor Philippa, that the council removes from its material damage policy those assets identified on the attached criticality ranking for the material damage policy schedule. All those in favour? Against? Okay, Councillor Philippa is against, and abstain? Councillor Robb. Okay. Item A is carried. So we move to item B, that council increases the deductible for non-natural disaster events covered by its material damage policy to $1 million for all council-owned assets. All those in favour? Right. All those against? Abstain? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we were supposed to have a break quite a while ago. We've actually gone beyond. So my suggestion is we've got 2 items to go. And sorry, I know Chantal and Justin, you've been waiting very patiently, but we are in standing orders. We're not supposed to go more than 2 hours. We've done more than that. So we'll come back. What is it now? It's we'll come back at 12:15 to finish the 2 remaining items. So, we're back online, are we? Okay, back online. Thank you, everyone. And that last item did take a bit long. As I said, it was a really important item for us. So I'm happy that we did that. And I just want to say thank you for your patience, Chantal and Justin. Welcome. Your next item on the agenda around 8.8 changes to the district plan, national planning standards, yeah, appreciate it. And I've had a bit of a check-in with Justin and Chantal. A bit of a check-in during the week, and just to clarify what this was about. So, anyway, over to you guys. It should be pretty simple, I hope.
Good afternoon to you all. Through the chair, the purpose of this report is to recommend the council to adopt the amendments to Whanganui District Plan under the Section 58I of Resource Management Act 1991. These changes are largely technical in nature and that relates to community facility, notional boundary for multi-unit residential sites, signage, and quarrying activities within rural zone properties. In 2020, Council made changes to Whanganui District Plan and notified new e-plan format to give effect to National Planning Standards 2019. These changes were required to have the same effect as the rules pre-2020. The recommended amendments in this report will bring the effect of rules back to the pre-2020 position. If the report is adopted, the amendments will be publicly notified by 1st of November 2024. This was my report, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions? I mean, basically, it's just a correction of a couple of items, and you'll see some strike-throughs there, which show where it's at. So it should be very clear. No questions. So I will happy to move. Councillor Kate, seconder. Councillor Philippa. Any comments? Assume no comments. So no further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen. Those changes to the District Plan, National Planning Standards 2024, that the Council A, adopts the amendments to the Whanganui District Plan set out in reference 1, and B, note if this is approved, notice of the amendments will be publicly notified on 1 November 2024. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Abstain? Motion carried. Thank you. So after your big wait, that took about 10 seconds, so thank you. All right. The final item on the agenda is item 8.9, the Chief Executive Report, October 2024. So over to you, David.
Bear with me, my diligent system is just having a moment. Do it the old-fashioned way. So through you, Worship, I'll take the report as read. First of all, apologies as well for the lateness of this item with me being away on annual leave. I missed the deadlines for the reporting, but it is here now. Key points, this doesn't cover all of my activity, and there's a whole heap of other things that in hindsight I could probably have added to this report. But one of the key ones that I did want to flag with you is the ongoing monitoring of our 6-point plan to keep rates affordable. You can see in the table there, each of the 6 points, you've got the sub-initiatives that sit underneath those. All of these targets are what are baked into the long-term plan budgets. From a non-rates revenue point of view, we are tracking quite well. Slightly ahead of where we ought to be this time of the year, based on the first quarter's financial results, so through to the end of 30th September. Our efficiency program is also making good traction, albeit there's still work to be done. You'll note there the $390,000 savings targets for our insurance premium. Obviously, the decision you've just made will have an impact on how much we're able to deliver against that target. So hopefully by the time I report to you again at the next meeting, we'll have a number to put into the actual column there. Cutting services, work's ongoing, and it is one thing I didn't mention in the report, meeting with the Friends of the Aviary so that we can finally hand that over to them. We're getting very close to that point. Discussions at an operational level have been going on around when staff will move over. There's a few things to put in place, like the lease for the ground underneath the aviary, the sale and purchase agreement for the structure. The team are working through that with the Friends, and it seems to be going well so far. Development contributions is one that is tracking behind, and that is largely because of the flurry as everyone raced to lodge their applications before the new policy kicked in. So we may find that we've got a slow start to that. Hopeful that we'll catch up later on in the financial year, but it is one that we could fall short on. And then again, population growth, this isn't one that we'll be able to measure until we get close to the end of the financial year, hence the TBC in the actuals column. And then the alternative funding, we've been successful at securing a second year to the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs contract, which Wanganui and Partners are delivering, overseeing alongside WEDIT and their 100% Suite programme. And the additional events funding that Wanganui and Partners have secured from MIMBY has also been previously reported. That's in there. And we also had some funding very kindly provided. I think it was from the Rotary. I'm going to be cautious here in case I get it wrong. It was the Rotary. For the cost of the hoist at the Splash Centre. So I would like to acknowledge their very kind contribution that allowed that work to occur earlier than it would have if Council had budgeted for it as we planned in the long-term plan in a future year. Overall, at the bottom line, given this report takes us to 25% of the way through the year, you can see at a global level, despite that shortfall in the development contributions, the bottom line is ahead of where we ought to be. So promising signs that we should stay the course and deliver on the financial results that are baked into the LTP. So some cautious optimism, but continue to maintain focus on that area. The other big one is the local water done well. As you know, I chair the regional steering committee of the other chief executives from the other councils in the region. A lot of work going on behind the scenes, appraising the various options for the governance arrangement, delivery models, some planning going into how would a regional entity actually be established so that we can get it to grips with the practicalities, so that when we get to the point that you are required to make a decision on what you want to do with our drinking water, wastewater and stormwater services, you are thoroughly well informed. And obviously the big one that's been going on is the community engagement, which again from my perspective looks like it's gone really well. We've had great reach through our social media channels, plenty of people turning up at the events in person, and the commentary on social media has not raised any surprises for us, and obviously our community reminding us that we still have sporadic instances of the brown water that we need to get to grips with, and a little bit of concern around water metering creeping in there as well. The launch of Thrive is another big one, a huge milestone for the organisation. It's been about 2 years in the making. And this is about how we build a high-performing culture within the council with our staff. We have developed a comprehensive core competency framework. The systems themselves support managers to have coaching conversations with their staff, set performance goals, and then appraise people's performance against those goals. I've set out there the core competencies that the framework's built around, the specialist skills that people need to do their particular job, whether you're a lifeguard, animal control officer, a planner, you all have different technical requirements that we need to make sure people are competent at. Make sure our staff are good decision makers. They deliver reliable results. They've got the people skills to influence, and we walk and talk our values, which is probably one of the most important ones in that suite of competencies. Really good engagement. The system also hosts online training modules. We've released the first one so far, which is targeted at communications. Approximately 60% of our staff have already been through that course, which is a really good engagement level. More to come, and we'll continue to work on building the culture of the organisation and making sure we're delivering excellent customer service to our community. In support of that, we've mobilised our wider leadership team. This is new for the organisation, where we've drawn in the tier of management and technical leaders below the executive team, brought them together as a group. It means that we can improve communication across departments, break down silos, but also engage them in driving the performance of the organisation in a consistent way, and help us as a leadership team deliver the strategic priorities that are set out in our organisational strategy. Building control reform is one area where I've provided quite a bit of detail in the report. The highlights, though, Minister Pank is considering or researching options for reform of the building control process. So this is building consents, code of compliance certificates, those kind of things. 3 options have already been put on the table for further investigation, which is set out in the report. Fundamentally, they all boil down to some form of centralisation of the function, either at a regional or national level. Quite fortuitously, MIMBY had very recently released their Q2 performance data on all of the BCAs, all 67 councils across the country that perform this function, and you can see the performance figures there. So when, as a country, we're processing building consents on average within 13 days, and 90 plus, I can't find the figure now in the report, circa 90% are completed within the statutory timeframes. I do call to question whether there's really a material benefit that's worth the disruption of reforming this part of the construction sector, accepting that the sector as a whole has definitely got a productivity challenge that needs to be overcome. From our own point of view, I'm really pleased to see that our council is processing things faster than the national average by about 3 days. We're completing things in 10 days on average, median, and 99.5% of our applications are processed within the statutory timeframes. So that's a really good result from our point of view. And again, if we're meeting the requirements and we're doing it within 10 days, you can't even get to see your GP sometimes within 10 days. Question if the focus is in the right area, maybe. Moving on, we hosted, or Wanganui hosted Minister Simeon Brown wearing his transport portfolio. I had the opportunity to attend one of his sessions with transport operators from within Wanganui. Really good conversation and engagement from everyone in the room, particularly focusing around funding and financing of our roading infrastructure, and getting some insights into the Minister's views on road tolling. Finally, I will wrap up, take the rest of the report as read, other than, 2 more points. The Executive Strategic Planning Day, as you can see there, quite a focus on our strategic risk registers. But one thing I did want to talk about now is the conversation we had around what we want the Council's reputation to be. And this is obviously just the executive team's view of the world, and there's more work to be done on this. But we structured our conversation around 4 key questions. Who is the Council? What does the Council do? What do we want it to be known for? And how well are we currently performing? And as you can see in the report, a summarised answer to those 4 questions based on our conversation. Who are we? Well, the Council's made up of people that live in the community. We're not a faceless, proverbial big brother imposing ourselves on the community. Our staff are your neighbours, your friends. They're real people that live here. We're also ratepayers too, so we care about how rates are spent. What do? It fundamentally boils down to the Council's here to provide that core foundation of infrastructure and services so that the community can build on and thrive. And that's evidenced by how we're spending just over 80% of our money on those core infrastructure projects, renewals, and we're careful and considered about how we spend money on what are perceived as the nice-to-haves. What do we want to be known for? The district's a great place to live, people are enjoying life and they're positive about the future, but the council's role in that is we offer great value for ratepayers' money, we're reliable, trustworthy, and we have a get-it-right first-time attitude. And then finally, how are we performing? Actually, we do most things really well most of the time. We're becoming more efficient. We know we're doing more with less resource, but we still believe we can do better. I would be quite pleased if I asked someone in the street, what's the council's reputation, and they fed something like that back to me. So that's what we think we should be aspiring to. Obviously, it's easy to say it. The challenge is walking the talk and earning the reputation, and that's certainly going to be the focus of my leadership and the executive team's management as we go forward in the coming months and year. And then finally, just a point, we've been hosting some of the offshore wind developers down at the port. They are the ones that are engaged in the process looking at the opportunity for an offshore wind farm in South Taranaki. We see a really big opportunity to position the newly rebuilt port as the operations and maintenance base for any wind farm that may be developed in the future. It will create decades worth of employment and economic benefit if we can get that work based out of Wanganui through our port rather than through Port Taranaki. I think we have a strong case, and there's been a high degree of engagement from all of the developers that have visited the port, particularly given the manufacturing and engineering capability we already have in our economy around that Heads Road area, Q West as well. So if we can secure that, it's not just manufacturing jobs, it's technical, engineering, professional roles that come with it. That'll be a significant boost to our economy. We'll continue to try and drive as much as much business through the port as we possibly can. And obviously this has all been done in partnership with the port director and their board at the new port company. So I'll leave it there, take it as read, and happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you, David. So there are a couple of questions so far, three. Well, that's starting to fill up. So, Councillor Rob.
Thank you, David. This is a very good report and very, very insightful. A lot of these things. Just a couple of questions. On the table there, it says development contribution 600,000. Current performance 18,000. I presume is 3 months should be be looking for 25%. But do you think that 600,000 is achievable?
So through your worship, yeah, this was something that we really looked at quite hard when we put together the new development contributions policy. In the long run, absolutely, I think it's credible. It's based on the number of sections that have been consented and built each year, and then it's obviously priced based on the costs that were put into the new policy. So if anything, it was slightly on the conservative side. The big issue at the moment is really one of timing. Like I say, we've had this sudden rush of applications because everyone wanted to get in and beat the deadline so they could pay under the old policy rather than the new. So it's going to be a slow start. The other thing is it tends to come in quite sporadically, where you'll get nothing and then a subdivision will complete. A single developer will pay a bill for $100,000 all in one go, and then all of a sudden you catch up really quickly. So hopefully it's just a matter of timing. But as I said when I introduced the report, I am flagging that particular one as being the main one that's at risk, that will probably fall short of this year. But hopefully we compensate in other areas so that at the bottom line we meet the overall target.
Yeah, and the other question is that talking about the building consent and the time, 99.5% of applications are done within 10 working days. If you mention that to the industry, they wonder what you're talking about, because the reality is that as you're aware, that when someone makes an application and they ask a question, it goes back, and then the clock starts again every time. So there's a lot of lead-in that goes into these, and I think to measure the performance, I think that needs to be taken into account. The quality of the questions that are asked and things like that, which is the subject I hear of a lot of complaints. So is that an aspect of this that you've looked into? Because these figures are pretty meaningless, really. It's only just the processing time of the application itself.
So, through you, Worship. So yes, have taken that into consideration, and I think this is probably a really good opportunity to talk about this to a little bit of detail. But before I do, quick correction, it's 99.5% processed within the statutory timeframes, which is 20 working days.
Okay,
The average is 10 for us. So the reason we don't count that time is when we ask a question and send it back to the developer, we're asking questions because they haven't included the information that we need to process their application in their application. So that's not a performance issue with our council or our staff. That's a deficient application that we're having to go and seek the information for. So we're quite well within our rights to pause the clock whilst the applicant then fills the gap. We have done some work to try and get to grips with how big that problem is. And from our data, we believe about 2/3 of applications have to have RFIs, requests for further information, issued because of a deficiency in the application. So one of the functions of our building consent team is actually to work with builders and developers to educate them and help them so they can produce better applications. So there's a lot of anecdotal talk, and there's always the extreme example that took, fell down the cracks between somebody's desk and took 50 days to process, or there's always those stories. But actually overall, the data indicates that we perform well. We do almost every application within the time limits. And on average, you get your building consent within 10 days, so long as you give us a good quality application.
And the other final question is that given those comments that have just been made about these applications and the complexity of a lot of them, it's hard to see that a regional approach is beneficial for these people making applications. So, I mean, here they're dealing with someone local, they can actually go to the counter and talk about them and things like that. If it's a regional approach, that may be difficult. So have you got a view yet on a regional approach?
Yes, I do. I'm quite cautious about it for some of the reasons that you've alluded to. I did when Minister Pank visited Wanganui a few months ago, have the opportunity to discuss that with him. I think he was still in the formative stages of considering whether he would or would not push forward with this reform at that point in time. One of the challenges is if you want an inspection done, you need a local person. You can centralise processing the paperwork pretty easily, but having that local presence so that you can get a responsive service from council so that you can have the inspections done quickly and keep the build moving is incredibly important. I would also point to some of the other added value that we've been able to provide here. Our Mates in Construction program, which I do mention in the report there, we deliberately partnered with Mates because there is a mental health and suicide issue in the construction sector. Our building inspectors go on pretty much every single job site in the district, and we've trained them with that mental health first aid. They can intervene and provide that support. We've done it partly because of my own background, and I've driven this, but if it gets centralised, things like that will disappear. That personal touch, that responsiveness, that added value all gets lost in centralisation and scale. And as you say, when we're doing a pretty good job, and our building consents are a tiny cost of a house build, proportion of a house build, it's hard to see how this is going to materially move the dial for the construction sector.
Thank you. Councillor Philippa.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, David. I think it's a really valuable report to us and the community. On the 6-point plan, I mean, obviously this is a great table, but some of these things they're not new as such, you know. New Zealand Glassworks, I think if I'm reading that right, we're trying to get, we're looking to 380,000 of non-rates revenue from that, and we're currently at, 71 odd thousand. What I mean is, is there any chance of getting a little bit of historical data to know that we're actually increasing? Because, like a number of these things, aquatics. Yeah. Obviously we have non-rates revenue, and it's I know that you've obviously set higher targets, but it would be quite good to have at least last year's figures maybe. So we've got a comparable. Question makes sense.
It does. Through you, Worship, yes, we can provide last year's figures because they're all in last year's annual plan budgets anyway. Yeah. But the reason these are highlighted is because they're the ones that we deliberately stretched in the LTP, set ourselves challenging targets that are larger than last year's. So you can kind of take it as a given. If it's in this table, it's because we've challenged ourselves to do better, whether it's to increase revenue or reduce cost. But happy to provide last year's information if you want it.
Yeah, I guess my question is, we wouldn't necessarily know if we've done better if we haven't got how much non-rates revenue did we get from New Zealand Glassworks last year?
Yeah. Understand. Like I say, happy to provide the extra information so you can see that difference.
Okay, Councillor Kate.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. Congratulations and thank you for your continued support of Mates in Construction. I think it's really important. My question was going to be around the, I do have a question around the reform of the building control function, and totally agree with you when you talk about the small percentage that the actual building consent is of the total build, and the importance of the responsiveness of local inspections to not hold up the build. And you had a conversation with the Minister about this. Is there any point in doing more than having a conversation about and giving advice, would be my question.
Yes. So, through your worship, the next stage is the Ministry of Business and Innovation are going to be working through a bit of research to actually put some substance behind those options, because they are very much the first formative what could be possible. There's already been a series of webinars and online meetings with the senior staff at the Ministry, which I've had the opportunity to attend. We'll continue to engage in those processes and feed into it with a view that we try and shape up or influence a sensible outcome out of the reform process, accepting we're one of many voices in this space.
Yes, thank you. I think it's worth being there. My next question is around the Sumitomo Corporation port visit. You mentioned there they're one of 4 farms, I think, 4 potential investors.
Yes.
How many is in the field?
Through you, Worship, hard to say for certain, but I know when I attended the Offshore Energy Forum in South Taranaki many months ago, there were 7 potential investors involved at that forum that were actively engaged in the South Taranaki opportunity. I have managed to speak to all 7 of them. 4 are the ones that appear to be the more engaged. I would say that the 4 that have been more engaged are also the 4 that appear to be the more serious contenders, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. Was there any discussion about the intersect of the deep sea mining?
Through your worship, yes, that's definitely an ongoing hot topic for the sector, and the potential for the 2 operations to be incompatible with each other, and it may come down to being an either-or decision. You can have one or the other, but not both. So that is something that we as a council probably also need to be monitoring, and there may well be submissions processing on the deep sea mining coming up that council is yet to form an official position on. And I know myself, Mayor and Andrew had a conversation with the Regional Council Chair and CE yesterday in our monthly catch-up around bringing something back to council so that you can have that discussion and perhaps form a view on what the council's official position is.
Thank you. So that's firmly on the radar.
Correct.
But we'll get to make a submission about that. Thank you. And just to save you coming back to me when I want to make a comment, if I can just make a small comment, I've said this a number of times, but I'll say it again. Particular thanks to you and Catherine for your leadership around the Three Waters reform. You know, we're ahead of the pack. Well, I feel like we're ahead of the pack. We're very well informed and very well positioned. So thank you for your continuing work in that space.
Right. Thank you, and you know, I will cascade that credit down to Catherine. She does a lot of the work. One comment I was going to make that I overlooked when Rob was asking about the BCA reforms is I am starting to get quite concerned about the cumulative impact of the reforms. If we get the regionalisation of water and BCA and RMA functions, there's a third of the council's revenue gone, and we will have to make some drastic changes to respond to those and right-size the council at the end of it. So I do think when we're considering each of the reforms individually, we also need to have an eye on the cumulative effect.
And if I could just add to that, hence my comment at the start and the message around collaboration and using Three Waters as a not in isolation, but as thank you, Kate, but as to use it as a part of a wider discussion about how we collaborate with other councils in regard to other regional matters where they're coming at us. So, Councillor Ross, question.
Thank you. Appreciate your report, David, especially the 6-point plan. Mine is probably picky compared to some of my colleagues' questions. In the efficiencies, I've got 2 questions. ICT applications review, target 50, current performance 47. So it sounds like you're almost there. And then it says percentage of target. Wouldn't it be 90-something% of the target rather than 0%?
Through your worship, Councillor Fallon has found my deliberate mistake. Well done. I always leave one just to make sure you read my reports.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing as I failed math at high school. The other one is, I've done better since. In the fleet review, the target was $50,000, current performance 31K, percentage of target 63. Could you educate me about the word fleet? Because all I hear out in the public is that we have 40, 50 expensive vehicles. We're spending another $5 million on electric cars. This is all news to me coming from the public. So what does it mean by fleet review?
So our fleet is relative. So we do have a large fleet of vehicles by Wanganui standards. I can't remember the total number, but it is of the order of probably circa 50 if I was to pick a number from the top of my head. What that's made up of, though, is, if you think about it, we have civil defence staff that need to be able to respond in emergency. So we have a couple of utes that those staff drive. We have building inspectors that need to be able to go out and do building inspectors. So we have some little Suzuki Swifts that they use to get around town so that we can be responsive, turn up and do the inspections when the builders need them. We do have a small pool of corporate cars that are available to managers to book out to get to meetings, but that's the minority of our fleet. And then there's also operational vehicles. Our Three Waters staff have some utes with a crane on so they can move equipment, materials around, some small trucks in our parks fleet, the lawn mowers that some of our staff drive. Those kind of things are all part of the fleet in total. All of our vehicles, or hopefully all of our vehicles. We're just in the process of making sure through the fleet review that we've got every single one GPS tracked so that we can monitor their usage, their speeds, make sure people are driving them safely. But the main thing we're looking at the moment is the utilisation of the fleet. So the reason we've made the saving so far is we looked at how much the vehicles have been used during the day for operational purposes. Some of them had quite low utilisation, and we made the decision to remove and sell 3 vehicles from the fleet. So we took them out of service, and people are just having to book what's left of the fleet. We believe that there's maybe some further gains to be made from making the fleet smaller and more efficient, hence why we've not quite met the target that we've set for ourselves yet. Since we took those 3 vehicles out of service, we've been continuing to monitor the usage of the fleet, and then we'll do another utilisation assessment once we've had enough time to see how that first reduction has settled down. If we think we can remove another vehicle or 2 from the fleet without disrupting the council's ability to deliver the service to the community, then we'll make that move and we'll sell some more vehicles. I have also asked my team to look at the type of vehicles that we are buying. We obviously need to make sure that we buy safe, 5-star NCAP rated vehicles so that when people are driving on the state highways, they're as well looked after as we can make sure we can. But I think we've got some room, particularly vehicles that just stay within the city limits typically, to buy cheaper, lower spec vehicles that are more appropriate for ratepayer funded vehicles. So we're going to look at the types of vehicles we're buying. That may deliver a future saving as well. We don't have a big grand fleet of EV vehicles. We've got a couple of petrol hybrids, but we're trying to make sure that the fleet is modest and it's as lean as possible so that we spend as little ratepayers' money as we need to deliver the service. So 3 vehicles down, $30,000 saving from just removing the operating costs of servicing, fuel, rego, rucks, those things from our operating costs. So we've made a good dent into it so far, and we continue to proactively work on it. Lean and efficient is what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Supplementary, Mr. Mayor. Suggestion only. Down the road, when that becomes clearer, it might be handy, because we are a very transparent and accountable council. We do a great job, actually. Maybe that could be another topic for comms at some point to educate the public about our fleet. Suggestion only.
Yeah, thank you. Great. So that's no further questions. So anyone like to move? Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Glenda second. Do we have any comments on this item? I'll just kick things off and just to say what I think in this report. There's a nice balance of working in the business, so to speak, and on in and on. So we're seeing an efficiently run organisation, but also focus on the outside, making sure that we're doing the right thing for our community at an operational organisational level, as we are as governors as well. The other one that alerted me was around reputation and perception, which is founded on the outcome of that is trust, and that's ultimately what our council organisation and us as elected members are looking for. And I think we deserve to have a strong reputation and perception from our community. But like all things, the struggle is to engage our community so they understand what we do to build that reputation and perception up, and that's certainly takes some time. Look, I'll pass over to Glenda. You've got a comment?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what you've just said, but I'd also just like to thank you for a really thorough report, and thank you for your great leadership. I know you have a great team behind you, but your leadership is strong and it's very thorough, and I feel very comfortable that we have someone leading the organisation as you. So thank you.
Yeah, well said, thank you. Great. So no further comments. I'll put the motion on the screen that the council receive the report, the Chief Executive Report, October 2024. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Abstain? Motion is carried. That is the end of the meeting. I'll just finish off with a karakia. Mea no tātou. e te atua kua hui, kua whakawiti, kōrero, kua whakarongo, nau I arahi, nau I manaki, nau I tiaki, I a tātou. Kua whakatau nā whakatonga, kia piki, nā painga, mō te kaunahera, nā iwi me te hapori, haumie huie taiki e. All right, dear God, let us pray. We have gathered, discussed and listened. You have guided us, you have cared for us and watched over us. Decisions have been made so that there would be improvements and benefits for the council, for the people, for the community. Bring forth unity, it is done. Great, end of meeting. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.